The lights went out at 11:47 p.m. When they flickered back 4 seconds later, everything had changed. The woman standing in the center of the ICU corridor wasn't the same timid nurse who'd been mopping up coffee spills an hour earlier. Her shoulders were squared, her breathing measured. Her eyes tracked movement in the darkness, like she could see through walls. Lena Reyes had spent 3 years being invisible at Redwood Veterans Hospital, ignored in meetings, talked over during rounds, dismissed as too quiet, too soft, too foreign. But the moment the backup generators failed and she heard boots on tile in the stairwell, something inside her switched on. Because Lena Reyes wasn't just a nurse. She was a weapon they'd forgotten to unload, and the 4 armed men moving toward Ward D had no idea what they'd just walked into. I'm going to take you through every second of what happened that night, the humiliation, the chaos, the moment everything exploded. Stick with me until the end. Like this video. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Lena was wiping down a bedside table when Dr. Marcus Hale walked past her without looking up. "Excuse me, Dr. Hale." He kept walking. "Dr. Hale, I need 2 minutes." He stopped mid-stride, turned slowly, and gave her the kind of look people reserve for telemarketers. "I'm in the middle of rounds, Reyes. It's about the Johnston implant. The wound's not closing. I think—" "You think?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Last I checked, you're not the one who went to medical school." 2 passing nurses slowed, pretending not to listen. Lena kept her voice steady. "The tissue's rejecting. I've seen this pattern before, 5 times in the last 2 months. All veteran patients, all the same implant model." Hale's smile faded. "Are you suggesting I made a mistake?" "I'm suggesting the implants are defective." Silence. Then he laughed, sharp, dismissive. "You know what your problem is, Reyes? You don't know your place. You're a nurse. You take vitals. You change bedpans. You don't diagnose. And you sure as hell don't question my decisions in front of my staff." One of the other nurses looked away. Lena didn't. "Johnston's incision is inflamed," she said quietly. "The skin around the implant is necrotic. If you don't remove it in the next 12 hours, he'll go septic." Hale stepped closer. His voice dropped. "Write it up. Submit it to the board, and then stay in your lane." He walked away. The other nurses scattered. Lena stood there alone, holding a disinfectant bottle, her jaw tight. This was her life now. 3 years of it. Say something, get ignored. Push harder, get labeled difficult. Report a problem, get told to mind her business. She'd tried going through official channels twice before. Both times, her reports disappeared into administrative black holes. No follow-up, no accountability, just polite reminders that patient outcomes are physician-led decisions. But this wasn't about ego. This was about veterans dying from infections that didn't make sense, and nobody cared enough to ask why.
Good job.
The rest of her shift dragged. Lena moved through the motions mechanically, checking vitals, updating charts, responding to call buttons. Every interaction felt hollow. When she asked Dr. Patricia Eng about adjusting a medication dosage for a diabetic patient, Eng barely glanced up from her tablet. "Just follow the chart, Reyes." "The chart hasn't been updated since admission. His glucose levels are, I'll review it when I have time." She didn't have time. None of them did. Or maybe they just didn't want to make time for her. In the break room at 4:30 p.m., Lena overheard 2 surgical residents talking. "Did you hear Reyes tried to tell Hale how to do his job again?" "God, she's relentless. Someone needs to remind her she's not a doctor." "Maybe she was a doctor back in wherever she's from." They laughed. Lena stood just outside the doorway, holding her lunch container, waiting for them to finish so she could microwave her food in peace. She'd learned not to walk in during conversations like this. It just made things awkward. When they finally left, she heated her rice and ate alone at the small corner table, scrolling through medical journals on her phone. An article about surgical implant failures caught her eye. The symptoms matched exactly what she was seeing in Johnston and the others. She screenshotted it and sent it to the hospital's Patient Safety Committee email address. She'd done this 4 times now, never got a response. At 6:15 p.m., Lena clocked out and walked to her car in the employee lot. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of rust and ash. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at the hospital's lit windows. Her phone buzzed, a text from her younger brother Marco. "Call me when you can. Mom's asking about you again." She didn't reply. Instead, she opened a locked folder on her phone, one she hadn't touched in 4 years. Inside were photos she rarely looked at anymore, a different version of herself. Younger, sharper, wearing desert camo and holding a rifle like it was part of her body. Staff Sergeant Lena Reyes, 75th Ranger Regiment, 3 deployments, 16 confirmed kills, 2 silver stars she never talked about. She'd left that life behind after her last tour, after the ambush that killed half her unit and left her with scars she didn't show anyone. The kind that woke you up at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, hearing voices that weren't there anymore. She'd wanted something quieter, something that felt like helping people instead of hunting them. So she'd gone to nursing school on the GI Bill, moved to a small city in Oregon nobody had heard of, started over with a name tag that said RN instead of Staff Sergeant. But some things don't stay buried. She closed the folder and drove home to her 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of town, where the rent was cheap and the neighbors didn't ask questions. At 10:52 p.m., her phone rang. She was halfway through reheating leftovers when she saw the hospital number on the screen. "Reyes." "Lena, it's Jenna," one of the night shift nurses. Her voice was tight. "We need you back. Now." "What happened?" "Johnston coded 20 minutes ago. Dr. Hale tried to stabilize him, but the infection spread faster than anyone expected. He's in septic shock. They're prepping him for emergency surgery, but we're drowning. Kayla called in sick, Derek's stuck in another wing, and you're the only one who knows Johnston's chart inside out. Can you come in?" Lena closed her eyes. "I told him. I know, but we need you." She grabbed her keys. "I'm on my way." The parking lot was nearly empty when she pulled in at 11:34 p.m. She jogged through the side entrance, swiped her badge, and took the stairs 2 at a time. The elevator was slower, and she needed the movement to shake off the exhaustion. Ward D was on the 4th floor, the veterans wing. 16 beds, mostly older men recovering from surgeries or managing chronic conditions. Quiet. Low drama. The kind of place where nurses could actually build relationships with patients instead of just cycling through them. Johnston was one of her regulars. 68 years old, Army infantry in the 70s, 2 tours in Vietnam. He told stories about Saigon that made her laugh, and others that made her chest tighten. He reminded her of some of the men she'd served with, the ones who made it home but never really left. When Lena stepped off the stairwell, the first thing she noticed was the smell. Disinfectant. Too much of it, like someone had tried to cover something up. The second thing she noticed was the silence. No beeping monitors, no shuffling footsteps, no low murmur of late-night TV, just nothing. She walked faster. The nurse's station was empty. A half-filled coffee cup sat next to a computer screen still glowing with Johnston's chart. A pen lay on the floor like someone had dropped it mid-sentence. Jenna's sweater was draped over the back of her chair. "Jenna?" No answer. Lena moved down the hallway, her pulse steady, but her instincts firing. Every door was closed, every room dark. The emergency lighting cast everything in a pale green glow that made the walls look sick. She reached Johnston's room and pushed the door open. The bed was empty. The IV stand was tipped over. The sheets were tangled. And on the floor, barely visible in the dim light, was a single syringe, uncapped, unused. Lena crouched, her hand hovering over it but not touching. This wasn't right. She stood, her eyes scanning the room. No struggle, no blood. Just an empty bed and the faint smell of something chemical she couldn't place. Ether, maybe. Or chloroform. Someone had taken him. Her training kicked in before her fear did. She moved to the window and checked the latch, locked from the inside. She scanned for signs of forced entry. Nothing. Which meant whoever took Johnston had come through the front. Then the lights went out. What? Total darkness. Not a flicker. Not a glow from the exit signs. Every electrical system in the building had just died at once. Lena didn't move. She closed her eyes and listened. Breathing, her own, distant shuffling. Patients stirring in other rooms. And something else. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Multiple sets. Coming from the stairwell she'd just used. Her mind cataloged the sound in a fraction of a second. Tactical boots, synchronized movement, suppressed communication. Not hospital security, not maintenance, operators. Her heart didn't race, it slowed. Muscle memory kicked in before thought did. She moved to the wall, flattening herself against it, and controlled her breathing. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. The kind of breathing that kept you invisible. 4 seconds later, the emergency lights flickered on, dim, red-tinted, barely enough to see. And down the hallway, 4 figures in black moved into view. No uniforms, no badges, just tactical gear, night vision goggles pushed up on their helmets, and suppressed firearms held in low-ready positions. Lena didn't breathe. The lead man gestured silently. 2 broke off toward the nurses' station. The other 2 moved toward the patient rooms, checking doors systematically. They were hunting, and they weren't here for the equipment. Lena slipped backward into Johnston's room and eased the door shut without a sound. Her mind was already running scenarios. 4 hostiles. Unknown objective, likely armed with subsonic rounds to avoid alerting the floors below. Radios. She'd seen the earpieces. Coordinated entry. Professional. This wasn't a robbery. This was an extraction, or an execution. She had seconds. She moved to the window and checked the latch. Sealed, 4th floor, no fire escape on this side. She pulled her phone from her pocket. No signal. They jammed it. Her eyes swept the room. IV pole, oxygen tank, bedside tray. A rolling cart with gauze, scissors, tape. Not much, but she'd worked with less. She pulled the oxygen tank from its mount, twisted the valve halfway open, and wedged it behind the door at an angle. Then she grabbed the IV pole, tested its weight, aluminum, hollow, but solid enough, and positioned herself in the corner where the door would swing inward. Her breathing was calm, controlled. This was familiar. The door handle turned. Lena didn't move. The door opened 6 inches, then hit resistance from the oxygen tank. A gloved hand reached in, felt the obstacle, and paused. Then the door shoved open hard, slamming the tank aside. The man stepped in fast, weapon raised, scanning left. Lena drove the IV pole into the side of his knee with everything she had. The joint buckled. He started to fall, tried to bring the weapon around. She followed with an elbow strike to the jaw, rotated inside his guard, and twisted the suppressed rifle out of his grip in one smooth motion. He was still processing when she dropped him with a knee to the solar plexus that shut down his diaphragm. 2 seconds. No sound louder than a grunt. She caught him as he collapsed, eased him to the floor, and quickly patted him down. Radio, earpiece, and mic clipped to his vest. Sidearm, Glock 19 with suppressor. Tactical knife in a chest sheath, zip ties, and a photo. She pulled it out. It was Johnston. Her blood went cold. They were here for him specifically. She pocketed the photo, took the radio and sidearm, and checked the hallway through the crack in the door. Clear. She stepped out. The second man was 30 feet away, checking another room. His back was to her, rifle slung across his chest as he used a handheld device to scan the door. Lena moved like smoke. She crossed the distance in 5 strides, silent on the tile floor, every step placed with precision. He started to turn, some instinct warning him. Too late. She got one hand over his mouth and nose, the other arm looping around his neck in a rear-naked choke. He tried to grab her, tried to throw his weight back, but she'd already shifted her center of gravity low. His hands clawed at her forearm. She tightened the hold and pulled him backward into an empty patient room. 8 seconds. His struggles weakened. 12 seconds. He went limp. She held the choke for 3 more seconds to be sure, then lowered him to the floor and checked his pulse. Alive. She zip-tied his wrists behind his back with his own restraints and took his radio. 2 down. 2 to go. A voice crackled over the radio clipped to her belt. Tango 1? Status? Silence. Tango 1. Report. Lena pressed the transmit button and said nothing, just keyed the mic for a half-second of dead air. The voice on the other end paused, then, sharper. We've got a problem. Tango 3, switch to thermals. Someone's moving. She dropped the radio and moved. If they were switching to thermal imaging, they'd spot her in seconds. The red emergency lighting wouldn't mask body heat. She needed to change the environment. She ducked into the supply closet halfway down the hall and scanned the shelves. Cleaning supplies, linens, and 3 industrial fire extinguishers mounted on the wall. She grabbed all 3, pulled the pins, and cracked open the valves. CO2 flooded the hallway in thick white clouds, cold, dense, and impossible to see through. Within seconds, the corridor was a freezing fog bank. Thermal imaging wouldn't help them now. The temperature gradient was gone, washed out by minus 70-degree gas. She heard cursing from the far end of the hall. "What the hell? Can't see shit. Thermals are useless. Someone's playing games. Sweep the floor." Footsteps. Fast, heavy, moving in her direction. Lena stepped into the vapor and waited. The third man came through the fog with his weapon raised, sweeping left and right. He was bigger than the others, moving with the cautious aggression of someone who'd done this before. Lena was already inside his guard. She grabbed his wrist with both hands, twisted the rifle barrel down and away from her body, and drove her knee into his floating ribs. He grunted, tried to yank the weapon back. She didn't let him. She pivoted, used his own pull as momentum, and slammed him face first into the wall. His forehead hit the plaster with a dull crack. She followed with an elbow to the kidney and swept his leg. He went down hard. She kicked the rifle away and dropped a knee into his spine, pinning him. He tried to roll. She drove her elbow into the nerve cluster at the base of his skull. He stopped moving. 3 down, 1 left. The last man didn't come into the hallway. He was smarter. Lena heard him moving, slow, deliberate, retreating toward the stairwell. He was pulling back, regrouping, or calling for backup. She followed, low and quiet, staying just outside his line of sight. The fog was thinning now, the CO2 dissipating, but it still gave her cover. When she reached the stairwell door, she saw him 2 floors down through the gap in the railing, moving fast but controlled. He wasn't running. He was executing a tactical withdrawal. Lena made a decision. She hit the fire alarm. The entire building lit up, strobes flashing, sirens wailing, automated announcements blaring instructions to evacuate. Chaos. Confusion. Exactly what she needed. And in the distance, she heard something else. Sirens. Real ones. Police. Someone on another floor must have called 911 when the power went out, but the last man didn't care. He stopped at the bottom of the stairwell and looked up. Their eyes met through the gap in the railing. For a moment, neither of them moved. He was older than the others. Scarred face, cold eyes, the kind of operator who'd been doing this for decades. He smiled and pulled a small device from his vest, a detonator. Lena's blood went cold. She didn't think. She vaulted over the railing and dropped a full story, landing hard on the metal stairs. Pain shot through her ankle, but adrenaline overrode it. She hit him at full speed. The detonator flew from his hand, skittering across the concrete floor. They went down together in a tangle of limbs, grappling, brutal, silent except for the sound of bodies hitting metal. He was bigger, stronger, trained to the same standard she was. But Lena was faster, and she had more to lose. He tried to drive a knee into her gut. She twisted, absorbed it on her hip, and got an arm around his throat. He grabbed her wrist, trying to pry it away, and slammed his head backward. She'd anticipated it, turned her face just enough that his skull glanced off her cheekbone instead of breaking her nose. Stars exploded in her vision, but she didn't let go. She locked the choke in deeper, wrapping her legs around his waist to control his hips. He thrashed, clawed at her arm. His training told him to tuck his chin, but she'd already collapsed his airway. 5 seconds. 10. His movement slowed. 15. He went limp. She held on for 3 more seconds, then released him and rolled off. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. She crawled to the detonator and picked it up. It was live. A small LED screen showed a wireless connection. Active. Armed. Connected to something in Ward D. Her hands steadied. She flipped it over, popped the casing with her thumb, and studied the circuit board. Simple design. Remote trigger. 2 wires leading to a relay. She pulled the tactical knife from the unconscious man's vest and used the tip to disconnect the ground wire. The red light went dark. She dropped the device and leaned back against the wall, breathing hard for the first time all night. Footsteps pounded above her, voices shouted, flashlights swept the stairwell. "Police! Hands where I can see them!" Lena raised them slowly, palms open. A dozen officers swarmed in, weapons drawn, shouting overlapping commands. "Don't move! Show me your hands! Is anyone else in here?" She didn't resist. She just sat there, covered in sweat and dust, her cheeks swelling where the man had headbutted her, and waited. One of the officers crouched in front of her, young, nervous. His nameplate read Chen. Not the same Chen, just a coincidence. The world was full of them. "Ma'am, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Lena looked at him, then she looked past him, up the stairs, toward Ward D, where the patients were still sleeping. "They're all alive," she said quietly. Officer Chen blinked. "What?" "The patients. Check Ward D. They're all still alive." "Ma'am, I need you to—" "There are 3 men unconscious on the 4th floor, zip-tied, disarmed, and one down here." She nodded at the man slumped against the wall. "They're all breathing. You'll want to call federal agents, not just local PD." Chen stared at her like she was speaking another language. Another officer appeared at the top of the stairs. "Chen, we've got multiple subjects down up here. What the hell happened?" Chen turned back to Lena. "Did you—" "I'm a nurse," she said simply. "I was checking on a patient." "A nurse?" He looked at the unconscious man, at the detonator lying on the floor, at her swollen face and the tactical knife still in her hand. "Yeah," Lena said. "A nurse." They separated her from the scene 20 minutes later, after the paramedics checked her out, and the detectives took an initial statement. She sat in the back of an ambulance with an ice pack pressed to her cheek while chaos unfolded around her. More police arrived. Then FBI. Then people in suits who didn't identify themselves but moved like they owned the place. Ward D was evacuated. Patients were moved to other floors, confused and frightened. Lena watched them wheel Mr. Patterson past, still hooked up to his oxygen, his wife clutching his hand. Jenna appeared out of the crowd, her face pale. "Lena! Oh my God, are you okay? They said—" She stopped, looking at Lena's face. "What happened?" "Where were you?" Lena asked. "Security pulled us all into the conference room when the power went out. Said it was protocol. We've been locked in there for the last hour." She sat down next to Lena. "They're saying there were armed men in the hospital. That someone stopped them. Was it you?" Lena didn't answer. Jenna stared at her. "It was you." "I need to find Johnston," Lena said, standing up. "Wait!" But she was already moving, ice pack forgotten. She found him 3 floors down in the ER, surrounded by doctors and security. He was conscious, groggy, IV in his arm. When he saw her, his eyes widened. "Reyes?" She pushed through the crowd. "Are you hurt?" I don't know. I was asleep and then someone was in my room. They put something over my face and He trailed off, confused. "What's going on?" A hand landed on Lena's shoulder. She turned to find a woman in a dark suit, FBI credentials clipped to her belt. "Miss Reyes? I'm Special Agent Monica Torres. I need you to come with me. I need to make sure my patient is—" "Your patient is fine, but you and I need to talk. Now." The tone left no room for argument. Lena looked back at Johnston. "You're safe. I promise." He nodded, still dazed. She followed Torres out of the ER and into a small consultation room. Torres closed the door and gestured to a chair. Lena sat. Torres didn't. She paced for a moment, then turned to face Lena. 4 armed men entered this hospital tonight. Professional operators, military-grade equipment. They bypassed security, cut the power, jammed communications, and moved on a specific target. She paused. And one nurse took all 4 of them down single-handedly. Lena said nothing. "I pulled your file," Torres continued. "Lena Maria Reyes, 32 years old. Registered nurse for 3 years. Before that?" She raised an eyebrow. "Staff Sergeant, 75th Ranger Regiment. 3 combat deployments, 2 Silver Stars, honorable discharge 4 years ago." She leaned against the desk. "So let me ask you something. What's a decorated special operations soldier doing working night shifts in a veterans hospital in the middle of nowhere? Helping people. By putting them in chokeholds? By keeping them alive?" Torres studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled out a tablet and set it on the desk. "Do you know who Thomas Johnston is?" "A patient." A witness, federal witness. He's been in protective custody for 8 months, testifying against Vanguard Med Industries in the largest medical fraud case in U.S. history. Lena went still. Torres continued. Vanguard Med manufactures surgical implants. Hips, knees, spinal hardware. Except their implants are counterfeit. Cheap materials. Falsified safety data. They've been selling them to VA hospitals across the country for 15 years. She swiped the tablet screen. 63 deaths so far, hundreds more with complications. And Thomas Johnston was their quality control director. He's the one who blew the whistle. The pieces fell into place. The infections, the rejections, the pattern Lena had been tracking for months. Vanguard Med put a hit on him, Torres said. Tonight was the second attempt. The first was 3 weeks ago in a federal safe house. Someone leaked his location. She leaned forward. We moved him here because nobody knew. It was off book, a quiet recovery while we prepped for trial. Someone found out, Lena said. Yeah, someone did. Torres straightened. And if you hadn't been here, Johnston would be dead, which means the case would collapse. Which means Vanguard Med's executives would walk. She paused. So thank you. Lena looked at her hands. They were bruised, scraped, the same hands that had changed IV bags 6 hours ago. What happens now? She asked. Torres picked up the tablet. We're moving Johnston to a secure federal facility. The trial's in 2 weeks. After tonight, Vanguard Med's legal team is going to panic. They'll try to cut deals, flip witnesses, bury evidence. We need to move fast. And the men are in custody. We're identifying them now. Likely hired contractors, expensive ones. Torres walked to the door, then stopped. One more thing. The detonator you disarmed, it was connected to a shaped charge in Johnston's room. If it had gone off, it would have taken out half the floor. Lena's chest tightened. Torres met her eyes. You didn't just save Johnston. You saved everyone. Then she left. Lena sat alone in the small room, the weight of it settling over her like a blanket. She'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible, and in one night, she'd blown that to pieces. The sun was rising when they finally let her leave. She walked out through the main entrance, past news vans already setting up, past clusters of staff and patients talking in low voices. Her car was still in the lot where she'd left it 6 hours ago. She got in, closed the door, and sat in silence. Her phone buzzed. 15 missed calls. 30 text messages. Marco. Are you okay? It's all over the news. Jenna. Call me when you can. An unknown number. This is Dr. Patricia Eng. We need to discuss your actions tonight. She turned the phone off. For a moment, she just sat there staring at the hospital in the rearview mirror. Then she started the engine and drove home. The story broke nationwide by noon. Nurse stops armed. Attack at Oregon Veterans Hospital. Former Ranger saves patients in hospital raid. Hero nurse disarms. 4 gunmen, single-handedly. Lana didn't watch the news. She didn't read the articles. She pulled the blinds in her apartment, turned off her phone, and slept for 14 hours straight. When she woke up, it was dark outside. Someone was knocking on her door. She checked the peephole. Agent Torres stood in the hallway, holding 2 cups of coffee. Lena opened the door. Torres handed her one of the cups. Thought you might need this. How did you find my address? I'm FBI. Torres stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk. Lena closed the door. About what? Torres set her coffee on the kitchen counter and pulled out her tablet again. About this. She turned the screen toward Lena. It was a photo. The same photo Lena had taken from the first attacker. Johnston's face. But not alone. Next to him, in the same frame, was another man. Younger. Military uniform. Army insignia. Lena's breath caught. Who is that? Torres asked. But Lena already knew. Because she'd seen that face before. 7 years ago. In a dusty Afghan village. Right before everything went wrong. Private First Class Daniel Johnston, Lena said quietly. KIA, Helmand Province, March 2019. Torres set the tablet down. You were there. It wasn't a question. Lena walked to the window and stared out at nothing. He was 19, fresh out of basic, got assigned to our unit 2 weeks before the deployment ended. Her voice was flat, factual. We were doing a routine patrol. Village elders wanted to meet, talk about a new well project. Standard hearts and minds operation. She stopped. Torres waited. It was an ambush, Lena continued. Coordinated. They hit us from 3 sides. RPGs, small arms, everything. She touched the window glass with one finger. Johnston took shrapnel to the chest in the first 30 seconds. Punctured lung. I got to him, tried to stabilize him, but we were pinned down. Couldn't get a medevac in for 20 minutes. And? He died in my arms. Lena turned to face Torres. I held pressure on the wound the entire time, talked to him, told him he was going to make it, but he knew. She paused. The last thing he said was, "Tell my dad I tried." The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Torres picked up the tablet again. Thomas Johnston never knew you were the one with his son when he died. We kept the details classified because of the investigation into the ambush, but he's been looking for answers for 7 years. What investigation? The one that went nowhere. Torres swiped through several documents. Your unit reported the attack as Taliban, but intelligence suggested the weapons used were too advanced, American-made. Someone supplied them. Lena's jaw tightened. We wrote reports, submitted evidence. Nothing happened. Because someone buried it. Torres pulled up another file. 3 months ago, Johnston found a document while going through Vanguard Med's records, a shipping manifest. Medical supplies headed to Afghanistan, 2018 through 2020. Except buried in the line items were weapon components, rifle parts, ammunition, explosives. She looked up. Vanguard Med wasn't just committing fraud. They were running guns. The room tilted. Lena sat down hard on the couch. That's why they want him dead. The medical fraud case is worth billions in penalties. But arms trafficking to enemy combatants? Torres shook her head. That's treason. Life sentences. No plea deals. No getting out. Who else knows? Johnston, me, my director, and now you. Torres closed the tablet. The prosecutors don't even know yet. Johnston was saving it for trial, to make sure it didn't leak. But after tonight, Vanguard Med knows he's still alive, which means they know the evidence is still out there. Lena stood up and started pacing. Her mind was racing through scenarios, connections, implications. The implants, the infections. How many died? Officially, 63. Unofficially? Torres hesitated. We think closer to 200. Vanguard Med paid off coroners, falsified death certificates, settled lawsuits under NDA. The real number is probably higher. And the weapons they sold? How many people died from those? We don't know. Lena stopped pacing. Guess. Torres met her eyes. Hundreds. Maybe more. The weight of it settled into Lena's chest like a stone. Daniel Johnston hadn't just died in an ambush. He died because someone sold weapons to the people who killed him. And that same company had been killing veterans stateside for years with defective implants. I want in, Lena said. In what? Whatever you're doing, whatever comes next, I want in. Torres stood up. You're a nurse, not an agent. I'm a soldier who became a nurse, and I just stopped 4 professional killers with an IV pole. Lena crossed her arms. You need someone who knows the medical side, who can testify about the implants, someone the jury will believe. We have expert witnesses. Do you have someone who held a dying kid while his blood soaked into the sand because the people who were supposed to protect him sold guns to his killers? Lena's voice was hard now. Because I do. Torres studied her for a long moment. Then she picked up her coffee and took a sip. The trial starts in 12 days. Johnston's testimony is scheduled for day 3. If Vanguard Med makes another move, it'll be before then. So we're running out of time. We are. Torres walked to the door. Get some rest. I'll be in touch. Wait. Lena grabbed her jacket from the hook. I'm coming with you. Where? To see Johnston. He needs to know. Torres paused with her hand on the doorknob. Know what? That I was there. That his son didn't die alone. Lena's voice softened. He deserves that much. Torres looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Get your shoes. What? They drove in silence through the dark streets. Torres had a black SUV with government plates and tinted windows. The kind of vehicle that screamed federal agent but somehow still managed to be invisible. Where are they keeping him? Lena asked. Secure medical facility, off the books. Only 5 people know the location. 6 now. Torres glanced at her. You tell anyone where we're going, and I'll have you arrested for obstruction. Noted. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading into the wooded hills east of town. The facility turned out to be an old private clinic that had been converted into a federal safe house. Tall fences, security cameras. Armed guards at the gate who checked Torres's credentials 3 times before waving them through. Inside, the building still smelled like a hospital, antiseptic and floor wax. But the hallways were empty, the lights dimmed. They passed 2 more security checkpoints before reaching a room at the end of a long corridor. Torres knocked twice. A voice from inside, "Come in." Thomas Johnston sat in a wheelchair by the window, looking older than his 68 years. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, hands that trembled slightly when he set down the book he'd been reading. He looked up at Torres. "Agent, I wasn't expecting you tonight. We need to talk." Torres gestured to Lena. "This is Lena Reyes. She's the nurse who—" "I know who she is." Johnston's eyes locked on Lena. "I saw the news. You saved my life." Lena stepped forward. "Mr. Johnston, there's something you need to know." He waited. She pulled out her phone, opened the locked folder, and found a photo she hadn't looked at in years. Her unit, Afghanistan. 12 faces, young and sunburned, smiling despite everything. She zoomed in on one face and handed the phone to Johnston. His hands started shaking harder. That's Danny." "Yes, sir." Johnston looked up at her, his eyes wet. "You knew my son?" "I was his squad leader. He was with us for 2 weeks before—" She stopped, gathered herself. "Before the ambush." Johnston's face crumpled. "You were there." "I was with him. The whole time." The old man closed his eyes, and tears ran down his face. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Did he suffer?" Lena crouched down in front of him. "He was scared, but he was brave. He kept asking if the rest of the squad was okay, if we'd gotten everyone out." "That sounds like him." "He asked me to tell you something." Lena's throat tightened. "He said to tell you he tried." Johnston broke then, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. Lena stayed where she was, one hand on his arm, letting him grieve in a way he probably hadn't been able to for 7 years. Torres stepped out of the room, giving them space. When Johnston finally composed himself, he wiped his eyes with a handkerchief and looked at Lena. "I've been trying to find out what happened that day. The army wouldn't tell me anything, just that it was an enemy attack and that Daniel died a hero. He did. But there's more, isn't there?" Johnston's voice was stronger now. "Something they didn't tell me." Lena glanced at the door. Torres was gone. They were alone. She made a choice. "The weapons used in that ambush were American-made," she said, "supplied by someone on our side. We reported it. Nothing happened." Johnston's hands clenched into fists. "Vanguard Med." "We don't know for sure." "I do." He wheeled himself over to a desk in the corner and pulled out a folder. "I found the manifest 6 months ago. I've been trying to trace the shipments, but the paper trail goes cold in Dubai." He opened the folder and spread out documents. "But I know they were running guns, and I know people died because of it." Lena looked at the documents. Shipping records, bank transfers, emails with half the text redacted. "Why didn't you give this to the FBI?" "I did. They said it wasn't enough for an indictment. The medical fraud case was solid, but the weapons trafficking was too circumstantial." He looked at her. "But if I can prove the weapons came from Vanguard Med, and if I can connect them to specific attacks, then it's not fraud, it's murder." "Exactly." Johnston pulled out another document. "There's a man, former Vanguard Med Logistics Director. He quit 3 years ago, right after an internal audit. I think he knows where the bodies are buried, literally." "What's his name?" "Marcus Delancey. He's living in Seattle now, working as a consultant. I've been trying to reach him for months, but he won't talk." "Maybe he's scared." "Maybe." Johnston looked at the papers. "Or maybe he's part of it." Torres walked back in. "We need to go. Shift change in 10 minutes." Lena stood up. Mr. Johnston, I'll do whatever I can to help. He grabbed her hand. Find Delancey. Make him talk. If he knows what happened to Danny. His voice broke again. Please. I will. In the car on the way back, Torres drove in silence for 10 minutes before speaking. That was risky. What was? Telling him about the weapons. That's classified information. Lena stared out the window. He deserved to know. Deserve doesn't mean anything in a federal investigation. Torres's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. If this leaks, the defense will claim witness contamination. They'll say Johnston fabricated evidence to avenge his son. The whole case could collapse. Then we don't let it leak. Torres shot her a look. You're not part of this investigation. Then make me part of it. I can't just deputize a civilian. I'm not asking you to. Lena turned to face her. But I know the medical side. I know the implants, and I know what to look for in a cover-up because I've seen it before. She paused. Plus, Vanguard Med tried to kill Johnston on my watch. That makes it personal. Torres was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. If I bring you in, it's unofficial. You're a consultant, medical advisor, nothing operational. Fine. I mean it. You don't talk to witnesses, you don't chase leads, you stay in your lane. Lena almost smiled at the phrase. Understood. Torres pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face her. Why are you really doing this? I told you. Bullshit. You could walk away. Go back to your quiet life, your nursing shifts, your anonymity. But you're not. Why? Lena looked down at her hands. The bruises were already yellowing. Because for 3 years, I've been watching people die from something that didn't make sense. And every time I spoke up, I got shut down. Told to stay quiet. Told I didn't know what I was talking about. She looked up. I'm tired of being invisible. Torres studied her. You know, this won't end quietly, right? Once the trial starts, once your name gets attached to this, you'll never be anonymous again. I know. And you're okay with that. Lena thought about Daniel Johnston, about the 63 confirmed deaths, about the hundreds more that nobody was counting. Yeah, she said. I'm okay with that. Torres nodded and pulled back onto the road. Then we start tomorrow. 7 a.m. FBI field office downtown. Don't be late. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, scrolling through everything she could find on Vanguard Med Industries. The company had been founded 23 years ago by 2 former military contractors, Richard Vance and Elizabeth Medford. Hence the name, Vanguard plus Medford. They'd started small manufacturing basic surgical tools. But they'd grown fast, securing contracts with the VA and Defense Department. Within a decade, they were one of the largest medical suppliers in the country. Revenue last year, $4 billion. Lena clicked through to the executive page. Richard Vance, CEO. 61 years old, former Army colonel. 2 tours in Iraq. Honorable discharge. Multiple photos of him shaking hands with senators, cutting ribbons at hospital openings, accepting awards for innovation in veteran care. Elizabeth Medford, COO. 58 years old, former defense contractor. MIT engineering degree. Fewer public photos, but the ones that existed showed a sharp-eyed woman in expensive suits. Lena kept digging. 3 years ago, there'd been a whistleblower lawsuit filed by a quality control technician, settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. The technician's name was scrubbed from public records. 2 years ago, an investigative journalist had published an article questioning Vanguard Med's safety testing protocols. The article was retracted a week later after the journalist issued a public apology. 1 year ago, a VA inspector had flagged irregularities in Vanguard Med's implant failure rates. The report was classified as administratively sensitive and never released. Every thread led to a dead end. Every person who spoke up disappeared. Lena clicked back to the executive photos and stared at Richard Vance's face. He looked like someone's grandfather, kind eyes, warm smile. But she'd seen men like him before, the kind who could order a drone strike over breakfast and sleep soundly that night. Her phone buzzed. A text from Torres. Briefing moved to 6 a.m. Situation developing. Lena grabbed her jacket and keys. The FBI field office was a gray concrete building downtown that looked like every other government structure. Lena badged in with a visitor pass and followed Torres through a maze of cubicles to a conference room in the back. 4 people were already inside. Torres made introductions. This is Special Agent Marcus Webb, Cybercrime Division. Agent Sarah Kim, Financial Crimes. Assistant U.S. Attorney David Brennan. And you already know the case. Brennan was a thin man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses and the perpetual squint of someone who read too many documents. He looked Lena up and down. "You're the nurse, Lena Reyes. Agent Torres says you're consulting on the medical aspects of the case." "That's right." Brennan didn't look convinced. "We already have expert witnesses." "None of them were in the hospital when Vanguard Med tried to kill Johnston," Torres said. "Reyes was. She's also the one who's been tracking the implant failures for the past 6 months." Webb, the cybercrime agent, leaned forward. "You filed reports with the Hospital Patient Safety Committee." 4 of them. "We pulled those this morning. They were never forwarded to the State Medical Board. Someone deleted them from the internal system." Lena's stomach dropped. "Who?" "Still tracing that, but it had to be someone with administrative access." Webb pulled up a screen on the conference room monitor. "Which brings us to the bigger problem. Last night, someone accessed the Federal Witness Database." Torres swore under her breath. "When?" 3:17 a.m., 12 minutes after Johnston was moved to the new facility. Webb clicked through several screens. "The access was masked through 3 proxy servers, but we traced it back to an IP address in Portland." "Vanguard Med's headquarters," Kim said. Brennan stood up. "They have someone inside, someone with high-level clearance." Torres looked at Lena. "Did anyone at the hospital know Johnston's real identity?" "Not that I know of. He was admitted under a false name." "But someone figured it out." Torres started pacing. "The attackers last night knew exactly which room to hit. They had floor plans. They bypassed security. That's not random." Webb pulled up another screen. "We've been monitoring Vanguard Med's communications for 3 months. Emails, phone calls, everything. But 2 days ago, all their executive communications went dark." "Dark how?" Brennan asked. "Encrypted. High-level stuff, military grade. We can see that messages are being sent, but we can't read them." Webb looked frustrated. "Someone tipped them off that we were listening." "Another leak," Torres said. The room fell silent. Lena spoke up. "What about Marcus Delancey?" All eyes turned to her. "Who?" Brennan asked. "Former Vanguard Med logistics director. Johnston mentioned him. Said he quit 3 years ago after an internal audit." Lena pulled out her phone and showed them the notes she'd taken. If Vanguard Med was running guns, Delancey would have known. He handled all their international shipments. Webb was already typing. "Marcus Delancey, age 47, lives in Seattle, works as an independent supply chain consultant." He pulled up a photo. "No criminal record, no red flags." "Johnston tried to contact him," Lena said. "He wouldn't talk." Torres leaned over Webb's shoulder. "Pull his financials." Webb's fingers flew across the keyboard. A minute later, he whistled. "He's got $2 million in an offshore account, deposited 3 years ago, 1 week after he resigned." "Severance package," Kim said, "or a payoff." "Either way, he knows something." Torres grabbed her jacket. "Webb, send me his address. Kim, pull everything you can on his employment history. Brennan, start drafting subpoenas in case he doesn't cooperate." "Where are you going?" Brennan asked. "Seattle." Torres looked at Lena. "You coming?" "Try to stop me." "No." They took a bureau plane, a small jet that seated 8 and flew fast. Lena had been on military transports before, but this was different. Leather seats, coffee service, no one screaming over engine noise. Torres spent the flight on her laptop, reading through case files. Lena stared out the window at the clouds and tried not to think about what they were walking into. "Tell me about the implants," Torres said without looking up. Lena turned away from the window. "What do you want to know?" "How they kill people." "They don't kill directly, it's the infections." Lena pulled up a medical diagram on her phone. Vanguard Med manufactures knee and hip replacements using a titanium alloy, except their alloy isn't medical grade. It's cheaper, weaker, and it corrodes. "In the body?" "In the body. The corrosion creates microscopic particles that trigger an immune response. Inflammation. Tissue death. And because the implant is already in contact with bone and blood, any bacteria that gets in spreads fast. Torres looked up. How fast? Sepsis can develop in hours. Once it hits the bloodstream, you've got maybe a day before multiple organ failure. Lena set down her phone. The thing is, these infections should be rare. Post-surgical infection rates are usually less than 2%, but Vanguard Med's implants were failing at 15%. And nobody noticed? They noticed. They just didn't care. Lena's voice was bitter. Vanguard Med settled every lawsuit quietly, paid off families, made them sign NDAs, and they kept selling. Torres closed her laptop. How many people do you think knew? At Vanguard Med, dozens, maybe more, but only a few at the executive level would have had the full picture. Like Delancey. Like Delancey. The plane started its descent. Marcus Delancey lived in a modern townhouse in the Ballard neighborhood. Expensive. Waterfront views, the kind of place you bought with offshore money. Torres and Lena stood on the front steps. Torres rang the doorbell. No answer. She rang again. A voice from inside. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Torres held up her badge to the peephole. FBI, open the door, Mr. Delancey. Silence. Then the sound of locks turning. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain. A man peered out, mid-40s, thinning hair, expensive glasses. He looked terrified. I don't have to talk to you without a lawyer. You're right, Torres said, but we're not here to arrest you. We just want to ask a few questions. About what? Vanguard Med. Delancey tried to close the door. Torres put her foot in the gap. Get out or I'm calling the police, Delancey said. We are the police. Torres leaned closer. And if you don't talk to us, you're going to talk to a grand jury. Your choice. Delancey stared at her. Then he looked past her at Lena. Who's she? Medical consultant, Torres said. She's seen what your implants do to people. Something in Delancey's expression shifted. Fear gave way to something else. Guilt, maybe. He closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it fully. 5 minutes. They stepped inside. The townhouse was immaculate. Modern furniture, expensive art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sound. Delancey didn't invite them to sit. He stood in the middle of the living room with his arms crossed. What do you want to know? The weapons shipments, Torres said. The ones hidden in medical supply manifests. Who authorized them? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Torres pulled out her phone and showed him a document. This is a shipping manifest from 2019, medical supplies to Kandahar, except the weight doesn't match the contents. Someone added 300 pounds of unlisted cargo. Delancey's face went pale. You signed off on it, Torres continued. Your name is right here. I signed hundreds of manifests. I didn't inspect every box. But you knew something was wrong. That's why you quit. Delancey walked to the window and stared out at the water. I had suspicions, but I couldn't prove anything. What kind of suspicions? He was quiet for a long time, then, the weights were always off. Not by much, a few pounds here and there, but consistent. I flagged it to my supervisor. He told me it was packaging discrepancies and to stop asking questions. Who was your supervisor? Elizabeth Medford. Torres glanced at Lena. The COO. Delancey turned around. I kept my mouth shut for 6 months, but then I started seeing reports. Veterans dying from infections, failure rates spiking. I went to Richard Vance directly and told him we needed to audit the manufacturing process. What did he say? He thanked me for my diligence, gave me a $2 million bonus, and told me to take early retirement. Delancey's voice was hollow. I took the money. I walked away. And I've regretted it every day since. Lena spoke for the first time. Daniel Johnston, do you remember that name? Delancey frowned. Should I? He was killed in Afghanistan in 2019, Helmand Province, ambush. The weapons used were American-made. Delancey closed his eyes. How old was he? 19? Jesus. We think the weapons came from your shipments, Lena said, and we think Vanguard Med knew. Delancey sank into a chair. I can't testify. If I do, they'll kill me. They're going to kill you anyway, Torres said. The only question is whether you help us stop them first. You don't understand. These people, they have resources, connections. I've been looking over my shoulder for 3 years. Torres sat down across from him. Then let us protect you. Witness protection, new identity, full immunity. In exchange for what? Everything. Documents, emails, names, every piece of evidence you have. Delancey laughed bitterly. I don't have anything. I wiped my hard drives before I left, destroyed all my files. But you remember, Lena said. He looked at her. You remember the names, the dates, the shipments that didn't make sense. She leaned forward. We can rebuild the case with your testimony, but we need you to go on record. Delancey stood up and walked to a bookshelf. He pulled out a leather journal and handed it to Lena. I kept notes. Against my better judgment. Everything I saw, everything I suspected. It's not evidence. It won't hold up in court, but it's a start. Lena opened the journal. Pages and pages of handwritten entries, dates, shipment numbers, names. Torres stood up. Pack a bag. You're coming with us. Now? Now. We'll put you in protective custody until the trial. Delancey hesitated, then he nodded. Give me 10 minutes. He disappeared into the bedroom. Torres turned to Lena. You think he's telling the truth? About what? Destroying the evidence. Nobody wipes everything. Lena looked at the journal in her hands. Maybe he's just scared. Or maybe he's still on their payroll. Before Lena could respond, they heard a crash from the bedroom. Torres drew her weapon and moved fast. Lena followed. The bedroom door was open. The window was shattered. And Delancey was gone. Torres ran to the window and looked out. There! Delancey was climbing down a fire escape, moving fast. Torres swore and grabbed her radio. Suspect fleeing southbound on foot. White male, mid-40s, gray jacket. A car screeched to a stop in the alley below. Delancey jumped the last few feet and ran toward it. The car door opened, and then Lena saw the gun. Get down, she shouted, but it was too late. The shot was suppressed, barely louder than a cough. Delancey dropped. The car sped away. Torres was already on the radio, calling for backup, calling for paramedics. Lena didn't wait. She vaulted out the window, landed on the fire escape, and climbed down as fast as she could. By the time she reached the alley, Delancey was lying in a pool of blood. She dropped to her knees and pressed her hands to the wound in his chest. Stay with me. Help is coming. Delancey's eyes found hers. Blood bubbled at his lips. I'm sorry. I thought I could. Don't talk, just breathe. The journal. He coughed, and more blood came up. Not everything. Not safe. What do you mean? His hand grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. They're watching. Everyone. You can't trust. Who can't we trust? But his eyes were already glazing over. Delancey! He exhaled once more and went still. Lena kept pressure on the wound anyway, even though she knew it was pointless, even though she could feel his heart had stopped. Torres appeared beside her. Paramedics are 2 minutes out. He's gone. Torres put a hand on her shoulder. Lena, you need to step back. But Lena couldn't move. She just knelt there in the blood, staring at another person who'd died before she could save them. Sirens wailed in the distance. And in her pocket, Delancey's journal felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The Seattle police roped off the alley with yellow tape, but the damage was already done. Lena stood near the ambulance, Delancey's blood still wet on her hands, while Torres argued with the local detective handling the scene. This is a federal witness in protective custody. Was, the detective interrupted. Past tense. And right now this is a homicide in my city. Torres's jaw tightened. We need that crime scene processed immediately. Ballistics, tire tracks, surveillance. We know how to do our jobs, Agent Torres. Lena tuned them out. She was staring at the journal in an evidence bag on the hood of Torres's car. Delancey's last words kept looping in her head. They're watching. Everyone you can't trust. Who couldn't they trust? A paramedic approached her with a towel. Ma'am, you should clean up. Lena looked down at her hands. The blood was already drying, turning brown at the edges. She took the towel mechanically and wiped, but the stains didn't come out. Torres walked over, her face tight with frustration. Local PD's taking over the scene. We're getting pushed out. They can do that? Jurisdictional pissing match. They'll send us reports in a few days after Vanguard Med's lawyers have scrubbed everything clean. She looked at the evidence bag. At least we got the journal. Delancey said it wasn't everything, that it wasn't safe. Safe how? I don't know. He died before he could finish. Torres pulled out her phone and made a call. It rang twice before someone picked up. Webb, I need you to run something. Marcus Delancey. Check his financials again, his emails, his phone records, everything from the last 72 hours. She listened for a moment. Because someone knew we were coming. They had a shooter waiting. Another pause. Just do it. She hung up and looked at Lena. We need to move. If they got Delancey, they know we're getting close. Close to what? Whatever he was going to tell us. They drove back to the airport in silence. Lena watched the city slide past through tinted windows, thinking about the moment Delancey had grabbed her wrist, the desperation in his eyes, the fear. When they reached the plane, Torres's phone rang again. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. When? Pause. How many? Another pause. Lock it down. Nobody in or out. She hung up and turned to Lena. We have a problem. What happened? Someone broke into the federal facility where Johnston's being held 30 minutes ago. Lena's stomach dropped. Is he alive? Yes, but 2 guards are dead and the facility's been compromised. Torres started the plane's engines herself, bypassing the pilot. We need to get him out of there now. You can fly this? Army reserves. Hang on. The plane lifted off faster than any commercial flight Lena had ever been on. Torres pushed the engines hard, cutting straight east instead of following normal flight paths. Lena pulled out her phone and opened Delancey's journal photos she'd taken before surrendering the original to evidence. Page after page of shipping manifests, dates, and cryptic notes. One entry caught her eye. June 2019. Shipment 4471B. Kabul. Routing through Dubai. Manifest weight discrepancy, 340 kilograms. EM approved override. RV signed secondary authorization. EM. Elizabeth Medford. RV. Richard Vance. Both executives had personally signed off on a shipment with hundreds of pounds of unlisted cargo. She flipped through more pages. The pattern repeated. Different dates, different destinations, but always the same initials, and always routed through Dubai. Torres, look at this. Torres glanced over while keeping her hands on the controls. What am I looking at? Every suspicious shipment went through Dubai. Always the same warehouse facility. Dubai's a free trade zone, minimal oversight. You can ship anything through there if you know the right people. Delancey noted the same facility code on every manifest, DXB 7730. Lena zoomed in on one of the photos. What if that's not just a routing stop? What if that's where they were repackaging the weapons? Torres's eyes narrowed. Webb can trace that. Send him the photos. Lena forwarded everything to the email address Torres rattled off, then kept reading. Near the end of the journal, Delancey's handwriting got shakier, more frantic. March 2022. Audit scheduled. EM asked me to delete server logs. Refused. Offered $2 million severance same day. Took it. Biggest mistake of my life. And on the last page, one line underlined 3 times. If anything happens to me, check the storage unit. Key with my attorney. He had a storage unit, Lena said. Torres banked the plane hard, adjusting course. Where? Doesn't say, but his attorney has the key. Find the attorney. Now. Lena pulled up a search on her phone. Marcus Delancey, attorney. Seattle. 3 results came up, but only one was recent. A law firm called Hutchins and Reed that had filed Delancey's LLC paperwork 2 years ago. She called the number. A receptionist answered. Hutchins and Reed, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with whoever handled Marcus Delancey's legal affairs. May I ask who's calling? FBI. This is urgent. A pause. 1 moment, please. Hold music played for 15 seconds, then a man's voice came on. This is Jonathan Hutchins. What's this about Marcus? Mr. Hutchins, I'm calling with Agent Monica Torres. Marcus Delancey was killed less than an hour ago. Silence. Then, oh my God. We believe he left materials in a storage unit. Do you have a key? Yes. He gave me a key 6 months ago. Said if anything happened to him, I should turn it over to federal authorities. Torres leaned toward the phone. This is Agent Torres. What's the location? Secure Space Storage in Georgetown, Unit 247. Hutchins' voice was shaking. What happened to him? We're still investigating. Can you meet us there in 2 hours? I'm in court until 4. Make it 3 hours. And Mr. Hutchins, don't tell anyone about this call. Understood. Torres ended the call and pushed the throttle forward. We get Johnston, secure him, then hit that storage unit. If Delancey kept evidence, that's where it'll be. And if Vanguard Med gets there first? Then we're running out of time faster than I thought. The federal facility looked normal from the outside. No police tape, no visible damage. But when they landed and drove up, Lena could see broken glass near the loading dock and scorch marks on the doorframe. Torres badged them through 3 checkpoints, each more tense than the last. Armed agents stood at every corner, weapons visible, radios crackling. They found Johnston in a conference room surrounded by 4 agents. He looked smaller than before, older. His hands were shaking. Agent Torres. His voice was hoarse. They almost got me. Torres pulled out a chair and sat across from him. What happened? I was sleeping. Heard gunfire. Then alarms. He rubbed his face. 2 men came into my room. They had the door code. They knew exactly where I was. Did you see their faces? Masks, tactical gear, just like the ones at the hospital. He looked at Lena. If the guards hadn't responded, but they did, Lena said quietly. You're alive. 2 men aren't, because of me. Torres leaned forward. Mr. Johnston, we don't have a lot of time. We need to move you somewhere else. Somewhere nobody knows about. Where? I'm still working on that. But right now you're a target, and whoever's feeding Vanguard Med information knows how to find you. Johnston's face hardened. Then let them find me. Excuse me? I'm done hiding. My son is dead because these people sold weapons to his killers. 63 veterans are dead because they cut corners to save money. How many more have to die before someone stops them? We are stopping them. The trial won't happen if I'm dead. Johnston stood up, his voice stronger now. So either you find the leak or you use me as bait. Torres shook her head. That's not protocol. I don't care about protocol. I care about justice. Lena watched the old man, seeing something she recognized. The same look she'd seen in the mirror after her unit got ambushed. The look that said, enough. He's right, she said. Torres turned to her. You can't be serious. Vanguard Med keeps finding him because they have someone on the inside, someone with access. The only way to find that person is to force them to move. And get Johnston killed in the process? Not if we control the environment. Lena looked at Johnston. You trust me? You saved my life twice. Yeah, I trust you. She turned back to Torres. We leak his location. Somewhere we can defend, somewhere with limited access and full surveillance. When Vanguard Med sends their people, we're waiting. Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at the agent standing guard. Give us the room. They filed out. Torres waited until the door closed. You're talking about using a federal witness as bait in an unauthorized sting operation. I'm talking about ending this before more people die. If this goes wrong, if Johnston gets hurt, if the trial gets compromised, it's both our careers. I don't have a career to lose, Lena said. I'm a consultant, remember? Torres almost smiled. Then she pulled out her phone. I know a place. Old FBI safe house, decommissioned last year. Still has cameras, reinforced doors, panic room. It's off the books. Perfect. I'll need 12 hours to set up surveillance and get a tactical team in place. You have 6. Torres looked at her. Why 6? Because that storage unit opens at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and if there's evidence in there, we need it before Vanguard Med finds out Delancey's dead. Lena checked her watch. It's 5 p.m. now. We secure the storage unit tonight, move Johnston to the safe house, and leak his location at dawn. And if they hit us before we're ready? Then we adapt. Johnston crossed his arms. I'm in. Torres looked between them, then sighed. I need a drink. Later, Lena said. Right now, we need to move.
What?
They drove to Georgetown in separate cars, Torres and Johnston in an unmarked sedan, Lena following in a rental with 2 agents as backup. The storage facility was a sprawling complex of orange doors and fluorescent lights, mostly empty this late at night. Jonathan Hutchins was already waiting in the parking lot, looking nervous. He was younger than Lena expected, maybe 35, with the rumpled suit of someone who'd left court in a hurry. Torres showed her badge. Mr. Hutchins, thank you for meeting us. He handed over a key. Unit 247, second floor. He hesitated. Can you tell me what happened to Marcus? He was shot. Professional hit. Hutchins' face went pale. Because of what's in that unit? We don't know yet. Did he ever tell you what he stored there? No. He just said it was insurance, in case Vanguard Med came after him. Hutchins looked at the key in Torres's hand. I told him he should go to the police 3 years ago, but he was scared. He had reason to be, Torres said. They left Hutchins in the parking lot and took the elevator to the second floor. The hallway smelled like dust and old cardboard. Unit 247 was at the end, unmarked except for the number stenciled on the door. Torres unlocked it and rolled the door up. Inside was a single filing cabinet and 3 cardboard boxes. Lena pulled on gloves and opened the first box. Files. Hundreds of them. Shipping manifests, invoices, internal memos. All originals. Torres opened the filing cabinet. More documents organized by date. He kept everything. Look at this. Lena held up an email chain. Elizabeth Medford to Richard Vance, June 2019. Dubai shipment cleared customs. Secondary cargo secure. Buyer confirmed receipt. Torres photographed it with her phone. Secondary cargo. That's the weapons. They worked fast, cataloging everything. There were bank transfers showing payments from shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. Photos of warehouse facilities in Dubai with crates marked medical supplies being loaded onto trucks with no identifying marks. And a spreadsheet listing every shipment with discrepancies, dates, weights, destinations. The last box held something different, a hard drive. Torres picked it up carefully. This is what Delancey meant. The journal was breadcrumbs. This is the real evidence. Can Webb access it? If it's encrypted, it might take days. We don't have days. Torres made a call. Webb, I'm sending you a package, priority 1. I need whatever's on this drive by morning. She listened. I don't care if you have to stay up all night. This is everything. She hung up and looked at Lena. We need to move this before someone notices we're here. They loaded everything into the trunk of Torres's car. The agents helped carry the boxes while Torres swept the unit one last time to make sure they hadn't missed anything. That's when Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You shouldn't have gone to Seattle. She froze. Torres saw her face. What is it? Lena showed her the phone. Torres's expression darkened. They're tracking you. Another text. Delancey talked too much. Don't make the same mistake. We need to go, now. Torres grabbed the last box and shoved it at one of the agents. Get this to the field office. Don't stop for anything. They ran for the cars. Lena's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Her apartment, taken from inside. Someone had been in her home. Torres saw it and swore. Get in the car. They peeled out of the parking lot, leaving Hutchins standing there confused. Torres drove fast, weaving through traffic, checking the mirrors every few seconds. Are we being followed? Lena asked. Can't tell. They're good. How did they get my number? Hospital records, employee database. Doesn't matter. They know who you are now. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Good. Torres glanced at her. Good? I'm tired of being hunted. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Torres's phone rang. She answered on speaker. It was Webb. We've got a problem. Another one? I pulled Delancey's phone records like you asked. He made one call yesterday, lasted 40 seconds. To who? Redwood Veterans Hospital, Nurses Station, Ward D. Lena's blood went cold. Torres's voice was tight. When? 2 hours before you arrived in Seattle. He called the hospital, Lena said slowly. Why would he? To warn someone, Torres finished, or to make a deal. Lena's mind raced. Ward D. That was her floor, her coworkers, people she saw every day. Who answered the call? She asked. Webb's voice came through the speaker. Transferred twice, ended up at extension 4482. Whose extension is that? There was typing on the other end. Then Webb's voice, quieter now. Dr. Marcus Hale. The world tilted. Lena's supervisor. The man who'd dismissed her reports, shut her down, told her to stay in her lane. The man who'd operated on Johnston the night of the attack. Torres pulled the car over. Hale's the leak. No, Lena shook her head. He's an arrogant bastard, but he's not a killer. Then why did Delancey call him? I don't know. Webb spoke up again. There's more. Hale received a wire transfer 3 days ago, $50,000. Offshore account. Same shell corporation that paid Delancey. Lena felt sick. Torres put the car back in gear. We're going to the hospital, now. What are we going to do? Arrest him, before he runs. They drove fast, lights flashing but no siren. Lena called ahead to hospital security and told them to lock down the building. No one in or out without ID check. By the time they arrived, it was too late. The security guard at the entrance looked confused. Dr. Hale left 20 minutes ago, said he had a family emergency. Torres showed her badge. Where does he live? The guard pulled up an address. About 15 minutes north. Want me to call local PD? No, we're handling this. They ran back to the car. Lena's phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You're looking in the wrong place. She stared at it. Then another message. Hale's a coward, not a traitor. Follow the money. Torres, look at this. Torres read the messages while driving. Someone's playing games. Or trying to help. Why? I don't know. But they're right about one thing. Hale's a coward. He wouldn't risk prison for $50,000. Torres made a sharp turn. Then who's really pulling the strings? Lena thought about the hospital, the hierarchy, the people with real power. Administration, she said. Someone in hospital administration. They'd have access to patient records, employee files, everything. Torres grabbed her phone and called Webb again. I need financial records for everyone in administration at Redwood Veterans Hospital. Start with the CFO and work down. That's going to take hours. You have 30 minutes. She hung up and floored the accelerator. They reached Hale's house to find the front door wide open and the lights on. Torres drew her weapon and moved inside, Lena right behind her. The house was empty. But Hale's car was still in the garage. They cleared each room systematically. Kitchen, empty. Living room, empty. Bedroom. Hale was on the floor, blood pooling around his head. Lena dropped to her knees and checked for a pulse. Nothing. Torres cleared the rest of the house, then came back. Single gunshot, close range, execution style. Lena stood up, her hand shaking. They're cleaning up loose ends. Which means we're running out of time. Torres pulled out her phone. I'm calling this in. We need... Her phone rang before she could dial. Webb's name on the screen. She answered. Tell me you have something. Webb's voice was tense. You're not going to believe this. The CFO of Redwood Veterans Hospital is named Patricia Eng. Lena's stomach dropped. Dr. Patricia Eng, the other physician who'd dismissed her concerns. There are two of them, Webb continued. Dr. Patricia Eng, physician, and Patricia Eng, CFO. Same last name. Related? Torres asked. Sisters, and the CFO has been receiving monthly payments from Vanguard Med for 6 years, totaling $3 million. Torres looked at Lena. The CFO's been on their payroll the whole time. Approving contracts, bearing complaints, controlling the paper trail. Lena's voice was hard now. She's the one who deleted my reports. Where is she now? Webb typed something. According to hospital logs, she's in her office, working late. Torres was already moving. Let's go. They ran back to the car. Lena's phone buzzed one more time. The unknown number. Careful. She's not alone. Minting. The hospital was quiet when they arrived. Visiting hours were over, and most of the staff had gone home. Torres badged past security, and they took the elevator to the 5th floor, where the administrative offices were located. Patricia Eng's office was at the end of the hall. Light showed under the door. Torres knocked. Ms. Eng? FBI. We need to speak with you. No answer. Torres tried the handle. Locked. She looked at Lena. Step back. One kick and the door splintered open. The office was empty, but the computer was still on, files open on the screen. Torres moved to the desk while Lena checked the adjoining conference room. She was just here, Torres said. These files were accessed 5 minutes ago. Lena found something in the conference room. A phone, smashed on the floor, and a small pool of blood near the window. Torres. They both moved to the window. It was open, 3 stories up, no fire escape. Torres leaned out and looked down. There's a ledge. She could have climbed across to the next building. Or someone grabbed her. Torres pulled back inside and grabbed her radio. All units, be advised. Suspect Patricia Eng may be fleeing the building. White female, mid-50s, blonde hair, detained for questioning. Static crackle. Then a voice. Copy that. Checking exits now. Lena looked at the computer screen. Financial records, wire transfers, and a folder labeled Contingency. She opened it. Inside were files detailing every payment Vanguard Med had made to hospital staff over the past decade. Not just Patricia Eng, others too. Doctors, nurses, security personnel. And one name that made Lena's blood run cold. Jenna Marquez, her friend. The nurse who'd called her back to the hospital the night of the attack. The nurse who'd known exactly where Johnston was. Torres saw her face. What is it? Lena couldn't speak. She just pointed at the screen. Torres read it, then swore. Where's she now? Lena pulled out her phone and called Jenna's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried the hospital. This is Lena Reyes. I need to know if Jenna Marquez is working tonight. The operator checked. She called in sick. Her shift was covered. Lena hung up and looked at Torres. She's running. Or she's with Eng. Torres made another call. Webb, I need an address for Jenna Marquez. Nurse at Redwood Veterans. She waited. Got it. Send local PD to that location. Do not engage. Just surveillance. She hung up and grabbed Lena's arm. We need backup. Real backup. This is bigger than we thought. How big? Vanguard Med has been paying off dozens of people. Doctors who used their implants, nurses who covered up complications, administrators who buried complaints. This isn't just fraud. It's a conspiracy. Lena thought about the last 3 years. Every report she'd filed, every concern she'd raised. All of it had been systematically ignored or deleted by people on Vanguard Med's payroll. She'd been fighting an entire network, and she'd been doing it alone. Torres's phone rang again. This time it was her director. Yes, sir. Torres listened, her face getting tighter. I understand, but... She stopped. Sir, with all due respect... Another pause. Yes, sir. She hung up and looked at Lena. We're being pulled off the case. What? Director's orders, effective immediately. We're to hand everything over to the main task force and step back. Why? Because someone complained, said we're compromising the investigation with unauthorized surveillance and witness intimidation. Torres's voice was bitter. Vanguard Med's lawyers are already moving. So that's it? We just walk away? Those are my orders. Lena stared at her. And are you going to follow them? Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled her FBI badge off her belt and set it on the desk. No, she said. I'm not. Lena felt something shift in her chest. What are you doing? Making a choice. Torres looked at her. You were right. We don't have time to play by the rules. Not when people are dying. You'll lose your job. Probably, but I'll be able to sleep at night. She picked up her gun. Johnston's already at the safe house. The tactical team is in place. We leak his location at dawn, and when Vanguard Med sends their people, we take them all down. Evidence, arrests, everything. And if it doesn't work? Then we both go to prison for obstruction. Torres smiled grimly. But at least we'll have company. Lena picked up the phone from the desk. I'm in. They walked out of the office together, leaving the badge behind. The safe house was in the industrial district, wedged between a closed factory and a rail yard. Ugly, isolated, and perfect for what they needed. Johnston was inside with 4 agents Torres trusted. The building had cameras on every angle, reinforced doors, and a panic room in the basement. Torres briefed her team. At 0600, I'm going to make a phone call that'll get intercepted. I'm going to mention this location, mention Johnston, and make it sound like we're overwhelmed and vulnerable. Vanguard Med will send people. When they do, we lock them down and make them talk. One of the agents, a woman named Riker, spoke up. What if they send a dozen people? We're only 5. 6, Lena said. Riker looked at her. You're not an agent. No, but I know how they think, and I know how to fight. Torres nodded. Lena's in. Everyone clear? The team exchanged glances but didn't argue. They spent the next 4 hours prepping, checking equipment, setting up additional cameras, running through scenarios. Lena found Johnston in the back room, staring at a photo of his son. Can't sleep? She asked. Not really. He looked up at her. You think this will work? I think we're giving it everything we have. And if it's not enough? Lena sat down across from him. Then we go down swinging. Johnston smiled faintly. Danny would have liked you. I wish I'd known him longer. He was a good kid. Wanted to be a teacher after his service was up. Help other kids who didn't have opportunities. Johnston's voice broke. He didn't get the chance. Then we make sure his death meant something, Lena said quietly. We make sure the people who killed him pay. Johnston nodded. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet. At 5:45 a.m., Torres made the call. She dialed a number that she knew was compromised. A line Vanguard Med had been monitoring. When someone answered, she kept her voice tired, stressed. Yeah, it's Torres. We've got Johnston at the old Riverside Industrial Safe House, the one on Polk Street. I know it's not ideal, but we're stretched thin. Just keep eyes on the perimeter and we'll move him again tomorrow. She hung up. Lena looked at her. How long? If they're serious, less than an hour. They waited. The sun came up slowly, painting the warehouse district in shades of gray and orange. Traffic started building on the distant highway. A freight train rumbled past on the nearby tracks. At 6:32 a.m., the first camera picked up movement. 2 black SUVs, moving slow, scoping the building. Torres watched on the monitors. Here we go. The SUVs circled once, then parked 2 blocks away. 4 men got out of each vehicle, tactical gear, weapons, moving with military precision. Riker swore under her breath. That's not a hit squad. That's a tactical team. Can we handle them? Another agent asked. Torres didn't answer. She was watching the monitors, counting hostiles, assessing their approach. 8 men split into 2 teams. 4 moved toward the front entrance. 4 circled to the back. They're coming from both sides, Lena said. Torres keyed her radio. All teams, hold position. Do not engage until they're inside. We need them contained. The front team reached the door and stacked up. One of them pulled out a breaching charge. Torres waited. The charge blew. The door exploded inward and the team rushed in, weapons up, moving fast and smooth. Torres hit a button. Steel shutters slammed down over every window and exit. Emergency lights flickered on, and a voice boomed over speakers. FBI, drop your weapons and get on the ground. The team froze. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then one of them raised his rifle. Torres's team opened fire. The gunfight lasted less than a minute. Controlled bursts, precision shots, suppressing fire. When it was over, 6 of the 8 men were on the ground, wounded or restrained. The last 2 surrendered. Lena moved through the smoke, checking bodies, securing weapons. Her training had kicked in automatically. Clear the room, assess threats, ensure the perimeter. One of the wounded men was still conscious. Lena crouched next to him. Who sent you? He spat blood. Lawyer? You're going to need more than a lawyer. Torres appeared next to her. Get him medical attention, and get them all in zip ties. I want statements from every single one. But before they could move, Lena's phone rang. The unknown number, she answered. Who is this? A woman's voice, calm, professional. Someone who wants Vanguard Med destroyed as much as you do. Patricia Eng. Very good. Torres motioned for her to keep talking while she signaled the tech agent to trace the call. Where are you? Lena asked. Somewhere safe. For now. Eng's voice had an edge. My sister thought she could control me, thought she could force me to keep quiet. But she was wrong. Your sister, the CFO. Former CFO. I suspect she's already left the country. Why are you calling me? Because you're the only person who's been asking the right questions. And because I have something you need. What? Proof. Real proof. Recordings of executive meetings where Vance and Medford discussed the weapons shipments. Video footage from the Dubai warehouse. Financial records showing every payment, every bribe, every death they covered up. Lena's heart raced. Where is it? Safe? But I'll only give it to you, face to face. Why me? Because you're not FBI. You're not DOJ. You're just a nurse who wouldn't shut up. Eng paused. And because you were with Daniel Johnston when he died. That means something. Where do we meet? Riverside Park, 1 hour. Come alone. I can't. Then you don't get the evidence. Your choice. The line went dead. Torres looked at her. No way. It's a trap. Maybe, but if she's telling the truth, you'll be dead before you can verify it. Torres shook her head. We have 8 prisoners. We'll make one of them talk. And how long will that take? Days? Weeks? Lena stood up. Vanguard Med's executives are probably already running. If we don't move now, they'll disappear. So we move, with backup, with a plan. She said alone. And you're going to trust her? Lena looked at Johnston, who was watching from the doorway. Then she looked at the wounded men on the floor, then back at Torres. No, she said, but I'm going anyway. Torres followed Lena to the car. You walk into that park and you won't walk out. Then don't let me walk in alone. She said, I know what she said. Lena opened the driver's door. But we both know you're not going to let me do this without backup, so stop pretending you will. Torres stared at her for a moment, then pulled out her phone. Riker, get a surveillance van, plain clothes. I need eyes on Riverside Park in 40 minutes. She hung up and looked at Lena. You wear a wire. You stay in open spaces, and if anything feels wrong, you abort. Deal. 30 minutes later, Lena was walking through Riverside Park with a transmitter taped between her shoulder blades and Torres's voice in her earpiece. The park was nearly empty this early. A few joggers, one old man feeding pigeons, a woman walking her dog. I've got eyes on you, Torres said through the earpiece. North entrance, west path. Riker's positioned at the parking lot, Webb's monitoring from the van. Lena kept walking. The meeting point was a bench near the river, tucked behind a cluster of willows. She could see it ahead, empty. She sat down and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Torres's voice crackled. Movement, 2 o'clock. Woman in a gray coat. Lena turned her head slightly. Patricia Eng walked toward her carrying a leather messenger bag. She looked different from her hospital photo, thinner, older, with dark circles under her eyes. She sat down on the opposite end of the bench. You came, Eng said. You said you had proof. Eng set the messenger bag between them, but didn't open it. First, I need to know something. Do you believe people can change? Depends on what they've done. What if they've stood by and watched people die? What if they knew it was happening and did nothing? Lena looked at her. Then they're complicit. Eng's face tightened. My sister convinced me it was just business, that the implants were a small percentage of failures, acceptable losses. She said the company would fix the problems eventually, that going public would just hurt the veterans who depended on Vanguard Med for other treatments. And you believed her? I wanted to. Eng's voice was hollow. Because if I didn't, I'd have to admit I'd spent 6 years helping them kill people. Why come forward now? Because they killed Marcus Delancey and Marcus Hale, and they tried to kill Thomas Johnston twice. She looked at Lena. And because my sister told me last night that I was next, that I knew too much, and that the company couldn't afford loose ends. Where is she now? Already gone. Private jet to the Cayman Islands 3 hours ago. She'll disappear into some offshore account, change her name, and live out her days on blood money. Eng pushed the messenger bag toward Lena. But she doesn't have this. Lena opened the bag. Inside were 3 hard drives, a stack of USB drives, and a notebook. The drives have everything, Eng said. Board meeting recordings where Vance and Medford discussed the weapons shipments, emails coordinating with the Dubai warehouse, financial records showing every bribe, every payoff, every death they covered up, and a list of every person on their payroll, doctors, nurses, administrators, government inspectors. Lena pulled out the notebook. It was filled with handwritten entries, dates, names, dollar amounts. "That's my insurance," Eng said. "I kept a record of every payment my sister processed, every person she bought. If something happens to me, that's how you prove the conspiracy. Why not just go to the FBI yourself?" "Because I don't know who to trust. Vanguard Med has people everywhere, but you..." Eng looked at her. "You're just a nurse. Nobody paid you. Nobody owns you. You're the only person in this entire mess who can't be compromised." Torres's voice in the earpiece. "Lena, we've got a problem. 2 cars just pulled into the south lot. 6 men, armed, moving fast." Lena stood up. "We need to go, now." Eng's face went pale. "They found me." "Come with us. We can protect you." "No, you can't. Nobody can." Eng stood up, backing away. "Take the evidence. Finish this." "Patricia?" But Eng was already running. Lena grabbed the messenger bag and started moving toward the north entrance where Torres was waiting. She could see the men now, tactical gear, weapons visible under their jackets, fanning out across the park. Torres's voice. "East side. Move east. We've got a van waiting." Lena cut across the grass, weaving between trees. Behind her, she heard shouting. Then a gunshot. She didn't look back. She reached the tree line and saw the surveillance van 50 yards ahead, door open. Torres was standing next to it, waving her forward. Lena ran. Another gunshot, closer this time. The tree next to her exploded in splinters. She dove behind a concrete barrier as bullets chewed up the ground around her. Torres returned fire, forcing the shooters to take cover. "Move!" Torres shouted. Lena sprinted the last 30 yards and threw herself into the van. Riker was in the driver's seat, engine already running. Torres jumped in behind her and slammed the door. "Go!" The van peeled out as bullets shattered the rear window. Riker drove like she'd done tactical driving courses, weaving through traffic, taking corners hard. Lena looked back through the broken window. The shooters were getting into their cars. "They're following us," she said. Torres pulled out her phone. "Webb, we're being pursued. 2 vehicles, both armed. We're heading north on Riverside Drive." Webb's voice came through the speaker. "Copy. Routing police to intercept." But the cars were gaining. One pulled alongside them, and Lena saw the passenger window roll down. "Get down!" she shouted. Bullets tore through the side of the van. Riker jerked the wheel, slamming into the other car and forcing it into a parked truck. Metal screeched. The car spun out, but the second car was still coming. Torres leaned out the window and fired 3 rounds into their front tire. The car swerved wildly and crashed into a light post. Riker didn't slow down. They drove for another 10 minutes, taking random turns, doubling back, making sure they weren't being followed. Finally, Torres told Riker to pull over in an empty parking garage. They sat in silence for a moment, breathing hard. "Everyone okay?" Torres asked. Lena checked herself. No hits, just adrenaline. "Yeah." Riker looked back. "What the hell was that?" "That was Vanguard Med Cleaning House." Torres looked at the messenger bag Lena was clutching. "What's in there?" Lena pulled out the hard drives. "Everything we need." They drove straight to the FBI field office. Torres's director was already there, his face red with anger. "Agent Torres, what the hell do you think you're—" Torres dropped her badge on his desk. "I resign. Effective immediately." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. I'm done." She pointed at Lena. "But before I go, you're going to listen to her. And then you're going to act on what she tells you. Because if you don't, this entire agency is going to look complicit when the truth comes out." The director looked at Lena. "And who are you?" "The person who just risked her life to get you the evidence you've been too scared to chase." She dumped the contents of the messenger bag onto his desk. For the next 2 hours, they went through everything. Webb hooked up the hard drives and started pulling files. Audio recordings played through the conference room speakers. Richard Vance's voice, calm and measured, discussing alternative revenue streams and logistical challenges in Dubai. Elizabeth Medford's voice, colder, talking about acceptable losses and managing liability. The financial records showed wire transfers totaling $47 million over 6 years. Payments to doctors, nurses, hospital administrators, VA inspectors, even 2 members of Congress. The director's anger slowly transformed into something else. Shock, then horror, then determination. "How many deaths?" he asked quietly. Webb pulled up a spreadsheet. Confirmed? 208. But based on the infection patterns and the number of implants sold, the real number could be over 500. The director closed his eyes. And the weapons? Still tracing those, but the manifests show shipments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, all conflict zones, all places where American troops were operating. How many of our people died because of those weapons? We don't know yet. The director looked at Torres. Unresign. No. That's not a request, Agent Torres. I need you on this case. Then you should have trusted me 3 hours ago when I told you something was wrong. Torres crossed her arms. I'm done playing politics while people die. What do you want? Full operational authority, no oversight, no bureaucratic delays, and immunity for Lena Reyes for anything that happened in the last 48 hours. The director looked at Lena. What did you do? Whatever was necessary. He was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. Done. But this goes public, all of it. No deals for Vanguard Med, no plea bargains. We take them down completely. Torres picked up her badge. Now you're talking. But the arrest started at dawn the next day. FBI teams hit Vanguard Med headquarters in Portland simultaneously with raids on executive homes across 3 states. Richard Vance was taken into custody at his estate in Lake Oswego. Elizabeth Medford's private jet was intercepted at a fueling stop in Antigua, and she was extradited within 6 hours. At Redwood Veterans Hospital, 4 doctors and 6 administrators were arrested. The hospital's CFO was never found. Her sister had been right about her disappearing. The news broke within minutes. Every major outlet ran the story. Massive medical fraud scheme exposed. Defense contractor accused of arms trafficking. Hundreds dead from defective implants. By noon, Vanguard Med's stock had collapsed. By evening, the company had filed for bankruptcy. Lena watched it all from Torres's office, sitting in front of a TV as the dominoes fell one by one. Johnston was there too, tears streaming down his face as he watched Richard Vance being led out of his house in handcuffs. It's over, he whispered. Not yet, Torres said. The trial still has to happen, and they'll fight this with everything they have. But 3 days later, Elizabeth Medford's attorney contacted the DOJ with an offer. She would testify against Vance and provide additional evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's turning on him, Torres told Lena, trying to save herself. Will it work? Doesn't matter. We have enough to convict them both 10 times over. Torres leaned back in her chair. But her testimony will make the case airtight, especially the parts about the weapons shipments. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Lena was called as a witness. She sat in the courtroom, dressed in clothes she'd borrowed from Torres, and told the judge everything. The implant failures she'd documented, the reports that disappeared, the night of the attack, Delancey's murder, the shootout in the park. Vance's attorney tried to discredit her. Ms. Reyes, isn't it true that you have a personal vendetta against Vanguard Med? No. Didn't you lose a member of your unit in Afghanistan? Yes. And isn't it true that you blame Vanguard Med for his death? Lena looked at the attorney, then at Vance, sitting behind the defense table in an expensive suit, his face carefully neutral. I don't blame them, she said. I know they're responsible. There's a difference. The attorney opened his mouth to object, but the judge cut him off. Move on, counselor. When it was Johnston's turn to testify, he brought the photo of his son. He held it up so the entire courtroom could see. This is Daniel Johnston. He was 19 years old. He died because Vanguard Med sold weapons to the people who killed him. And for 7 years, I didn't know why. I didn't know who was responsible. His voice broke. But now I do. And I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. The courtroom was silent. Vance's attorney didn't ask any questions. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Prosecutors presented recordings, documents, financial records, and testimony from 37 witnesses. Elizabeth Medford testified for 3 days, detailing every shipment, every bribe, every decision made in closed-door meetings. She tried to paint herself as a reluctant participant, but the evidence showed otherwise. Emails where she'd personally authorized payments, recordings where she'd laughed about veterinary-grade implants being used on veterans. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Richard Vance showed no emotion when the verdict was read. Elizabeth Medford started crying. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Vance, 35 years federal prison, no parole. Medford, 28 years, eligible for parole after 20. The judge's statement was scathing. You betrayed the trust of the men and women who served this country. You prioritized profit over human life. And when your crimes were exposed, you tried to silence those who sought justice. The court finds no mitigating factors and no reason for leniency. Lena wasn't in the courtroom for the sentencing. She was back at work. Redwood Veterans Hospital had offered her a promotion, director of patient safety. She'd turned it down. Why? The new hospital administrator had asked. Because I'm a nurse. That's all I ever wanted to be. But she'd accepted a different role, clinical liaison, which meant she'd work directly with doctors, review cases, and make sure concerns were heard. No more being dismissed. No more being told to stay in her lane. On her first day back, she walked into Ward D and found Dr. Marcus Hale's office empty. The new physician covering his cases was a younger woman named Dr. Sarah Okafor. "You're Reyes," Okafor said when they met. "I've read about you. Don't believe everything you read." "I don't, but I do believe you saved lives." Okafor extended her hand. "I'm looking forward to working with you." They shook. "Patient in room 12 has an elevated white count," Lena said. "Incision site looks inflamed. Might want to check for early infection." Okafor pulled up the chart on her tablet. "You're right. I'll order cultures now. Thank you." Lena smiled. "That's the job." 3 months after the verdict, Lena received a package at her apartment. No return address, just her name on the label. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single item, a medal. The silver star that Daniel Johnston had been awarded posthumously. There was a note with it, handwritten. "Lena, my son would have wanted you to have this. You were with him at the end, and you made sure the people who killed him faced justice. I can never repay you for that. But I hope this reminds you that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear scrubs. Thank you for everything. Thomas Johnston." Lena held the medal for a long time, feeling the weight of it. Then she put it in the box with her own medals and locked it away. She didn't need reminders of who she'd been. She knew who she was now. Met. 6 months later, the civil lawsuit started. Families of the victims sued Vanguard Med's bankruptcy estate for wrongful death. The settlement fund totaled $800 million, barely a fraction of what the company had made, but enough to provide some measure of compensation. Lena was asked to speak at a memorial service for the victims. She stood at the podium, looking out at 200 faces, and spoke from the heart. "I'm not going to stand here and tell you that justice was served, because nothing we do can bring back the people we lost. Nothing can undo the suffering they endured or the holes they left in your lives." She paused. "But I can tell you this. The people responsible are in prison. The company that enabled them is gone. And the system that allowed it to happen is being reformed. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something." She looked down at her notes, then decided not to use them. 3 years ago, I tried to report problems and got told to shut up. I tried to save lives and got called difficult. I tried to do the right thing and got pushed aside by people who thought they knew better. Her voice got stronger. But I didn't stop. And neither did the people who helped me. And eventually we made enough noise that someone had to listen. So if you take anything from this, take that. Don't stop. Don't let people tell you you're wrong when you know you're right. Don't let them silence you because it's convenient. She looked out at the crowd. Be loud. Be relentless. Be the person who refuses to go away. The applause started small, then grew. When she stepped off the stage, Johnston was waiting. "That was good," he said. "It was the truth. The best kind of good." He smiled. "You doing okay?" "Getting there. You?" "Same." He looked at the crowd. "A lot of faces here. A lot of people who were affected." "Yeah. They'll remember this. What you did." Lena shook her head. "I just did my job." "No. You did what most people wouldn't." Johnston put a hand on her shoulder. "You fought back. And you won." But the fight wasn't completely over. 2 weeks later, Lena received a phone call from Torres. We have a problem. What now? Patricia Eng, the CFO who disappeared. We found her. Alive? No. Body washed up on a beach in Mexico 3 days ago. Gunshot to the head. Lena closed her eyes. Vanguard Med? Maybe. Or her sister tying up loose ends from the Caymans. Torres paused. But that's not why I'm calling. We found something else. Another hard drive, hidden in a safety deposit box registered under a false name. What's on it? More evidence, but not about Vanguard Med. Torres's voice was grim. About other companies, other conspiracies. Eng wasn't just documenting her sister's crimes. She was documenting everything she saw across the entire medical supply industry. How many companies? 12. All doing the same thing Vanguard Med did. Cutting corners, bribing officials, killing people for profit. Lena felt exhaustion wash over her. So it's not over. No, it's not. Torres was quiet for a moment. But I'm not asking you to keep fighting. You've done enough, more than enough. What are you asking? For permission to use your name. When we go after these companies, it'll help if we can say that the nurse who brought down Vanguard Med is part of the investigation. Lena thought about it, about the cost, about everything she'd already lost and everything she'd gained. You don't need my permission, she said, but you have it anyway. Thank you. Torres? Yeah? Make them pay. All of them. That's the plan. Tata. 1 year after the verdict, Lena was working a normal shift when she got called to the ICU. A new admission. Veteran. Complications from a knee replacement. She walked into the room and stopped. The patient was young, maybe 25. He had the same look Daniel Johnston had in that photograph. Eager, scared, trying to be brave. Hi, she said. I'm Lena. I'll be coordinating your care. Nice to meet you. He tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. They said the surgery went fine, but something's wrong. Lena pulled up his chart. The implant was from a company called Meridian Medical. She didn't recognize the name, but something about the infection pattern looked familiar. How long have you had pain? She asked. 3 days, getting worse. She examined the incision site, inflamed, necrotic tissue forming at the edges. The same pattern she'd seen before. I'm going to run some tests, she said calmly, and I'm going to talk to your surgeon. But I need you to trust me, okay? Okay? She walked out of the room and pulled out her phone. Called Torres. It's starting again, Lena said. What is? Meridian Medical. I've got a patient with the same infection pattern Vanguard Med's implants caused. Torres swore. Meridian's on Eng's list. We haven't gotten to them yet. Well, they just moved to the top. I'll make some calls. Can you document everything? Already on it. Lena hung up and went back to work. Because this was what she did now. This was who she was. Not a soldier, not a victim, not someone who stayed quiet. A nurse who refused to look away. And when she walked into that patient's room an hour later with a new treatment plan and a promise that someone was listening, she saw the relief in his eyes. That was enough. For now, that was enough. But late that night, when Lena was driving home, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She'd blocked dozens of unknown numbers in the past year. Reporters, lawyers, people who wanted something from her. But this one made her pull over. You did good work on Vanguard Med, but there are bigger players, ones who make them look small, ones who've been watching you. Be careful. She stared at the message. Then another text came through, a photo. It was taken from inside her apartment. Today, while she was at work. On her kitchen table was a folder she'd never seen before. She drove home faster than she should have, her heart racing. The apartment door was locked, no signs of forced entry, but the folder was there. Inside were documents, classified military procurement records, congressional testimony from closed-door sessions, and a name that appeared over and over. Senator William Cross, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, the man who'd overseen defense contracts for the last 15 years. The man who'd approved Vanguard Med's contracts. And according to these documents, the man who'd received $12 million in campaign contributions from medical defense contractors, including 7 that were now under investigation. Lena's hands shook as she read. Her phone buzzed again. They're all connected. Vanguard Med was just the beginning. If you want the truth, dig deeper. But if you do, they'll come for you. Choice is yours. The message deleted itself as she watched. Lena sat down at her kitchen table and stared at the folder. She thought about walking away, about being done, about living a quiet life and letting someone else carry this weight. Then she thought about Daniel Johnston, about the 208 confirmed deaths, about the young veteran in the ICU with an infection that shouldn't exist. She opened her laptop and started typing. Subject, Torres, we need to talk, now. Because Lena Reyes had learned something over the past year. When you pull on one thread, sometimes the whole system unravels. And she'd just found another thread. Torres arrived at Lena's apartment within 20 minutes, Webb right behind her. They stood in the kitchen, staring at the folder spread across the table. How did this get here? Torres asked. Same person who's been texting me. Same one who warned us about hail. Lena pulled up the deleted messages on her phone. They've been watching this whole time. Webb photographed every document with his phone. Senator Cross. I knew his name kept appearing in the Vanguard Med files, but I thought it was just standard oversight. It wasn't oversight. Lena pointed to a bank statement. Look at the dates. He received donations from Vanguard Med 2 weeks before he fast-tracked their contracts through committee. Same pattern with 6 other companies. Torres flipped through pages. This is quid pro quo. Campaign finance violations at minimum. Conspiracy to commit fraud if we can prove he knew about the defective implants. He knew. Webb held up a printout of an email. This is from Richard Vance to Cross's chief of staff. RE, quality concerns. Senator assured us these won't impact contract renewal. Dated 3 months before the first deaths were reported. Lena felt cold. He knew people were dying and he protected them anyway. Because they were paying him. Torres pulled out her phone. I'm calling the director. Wait. Lena grabbed her arm. Think about what happened last time we moved too fast. Delancey got killed. Hale got killed. Patricia Eng ended up dead in Mexico. Every time we get close, someone dies. So what do you suggest? We don't investigate quietly. We go public, immediately, before Cross knows we have this. Webb shook his head. That violates every protocol. We need to verify sources, build a case. By the time we do that, these documents will disappear, and whoever left them here will be dead. Lena looked at Torres. Your mysterious informant gave you this for a reason. They want it out in the open where Cross can't bury it. Torres was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Webb. How fast can you verify these documents are real? The bank statements I can confirm in an hour. The emails will take longer. I'd need to access Cross's servers, which requires a warrant. We don't have time for warrants. Torres made a decision. Lena's right. We leak it. All of it. Tonight. To who? Webb asked. Everyone. Torres pulled out her laptop. Every major news outlet. Every investigative journalist who covered Vanguard Med. We flood the zone, so even if Cross tries to suppress it, the story's already out there. Lena's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Smart move. But be ready. Cross won't go down without burning everything around him. She showed Torres. Who is this person? Torres asked. I don't know. But they've been right about everything so far. Lena typed back. Who are you? The response came immediately. Someone who used to work for Cross. Someone who's seen enough. Good luck. Then nothing. Webb started uploading documents to secure servers. Torres drafted an email and sent it to 47 journalists simultaneously, marking it urgent, open immediately. Within an hour, phones started ringing. By morning, it was everywhere. Senator Cross linked to medical fraud scheme. Classified documents show. Armed Services Chair took millions from contractors Vanguard. Med scandal expands to Capitol Hill. Lena watched the news coverage from Torres's office, drinking coffee that had gone cold. Every channel was running the story. Cross's office had issued a statement denying everything, calling it a politically motivated smear campaign. But the documents were real, and journalists were already finding more connections. By noon, 3 other senators had been implicated. By evening, the House Ethics Committee had announced an investigation. Torres's phone wouldn't stop ringing. She ignored most calls, but when the Attorney General's office appeared on the screen, she answered. Yes, sir? She listened. I understand. Yes? She's here with me now. A pause. I'll tell her. She hung up and looked at Lena. They want you to testify. Congressional hearing. Next week. About what? Everything. Vanguard Med, the cover-up, and now Cross. Torres sat down. This is going to get ugly. Cross has allies, powerful ones. They're going to come after you. Let them. Lena, I'm serious. They'll dig into your past, question your credibility, try to paint you as unstable. I don't care. Lena set down her coffee. I'm done being afraid of powerful men who think they're untouchable. Torres smiled. Then let's make sure they're not. The hearing was scheduled for 6 days later in a packed congressional chamber. Lena sat at a table facing a panel of 15 representatives, cameras recording every moment. The chairman, a gray-haired man named Congressman Malik, opened with a statement. We're here to investigate allegations of corruption, fraud, and criminal conspiracy involving Senator William Cross and multiple defense contractors. Ms. Reyes, you've been called as a fact witness. Please state your name for the record. Oh, Lena Maria Reyes. And your occupation? Registered nurse, Redwood Veterans Hospital. Can you tell us how you became involved in the Vanguard Med investigation? Lena took a breath. Then she told them everything. She described tracking implant failures for months, filing reports that disappeared, being dismissed by supervisors. She explained the night armed men attacked the hospital, how she'd stopped them, how she'd learned Johnston was a federal witness. She detailed Delancey's murder, the storage unit evidence, Patricia Eng's confession, and finally, she described the folder that appeared in her apartment, linking everything back to Cross. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Cross's attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Valerie Kern, stood up. Miss Reyes, you claim to have been a nurse for 3 years, but before that you were military, correct? Yes. And you received an honorable discharge. Can you tell us why you left the service? Lena's jaw tightened. Medical reasons. Specifically? Post-traumatic stress. Kern smiled. So you've been diagnosed with PTSD, and yet you expect this committee to believe your account of events? Events that include allegedly disarming 4 armed assailants single-handedly, participating in unsanctioned FBI operations, and receiving anonymous messages from unknown sources. Yes. Isn't it possible, Ms. Reyes, that your condition has caused you to misinterpret certain situations? To see threats where none exist? Torres stood up in the gallery. Objection! This is character assassination, not questioning. Malik banged his gavel. Counselor, stick to relevant questions. But Kern wasn't done. Miss Reyes, have you been taking medication for your PTSD? That's none of your business. It is if it affects your credibility. Have you experienced hallucinations? Paranoid thoughts? Violent episodes? Lena leaned forward. I've experienced watching a 19-year-old soldier die in my arms because your client sold weapons to the people who killed him. I've experienced seeing 63 veterans die from infections that shouldn't have happened. And I've experienced being told to shut up and stay in my lane by people like you who profit from silence. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like steel. So yes, I have PTSD because I've seen things that would break most people. But that doesn't make me unreliable. It makes me someone who refuses to look away when convenient. The gallery erupted in applause. Malik banged the gavel again. Order! But the damage was done. Kern tried a few more questions, but Lena didn't flinch. When they finally dismissed her, she walked out of the chamber to find a crowd of reporters waiting. Miss Reyes, what do you say to Senator Cross's claims that you're lying? I say prove it. All the evidence is public. Anyone can verify it. Do you think Cross will resign? I think Cross will go to prison. What's next for you? Lena stopped. She hadn't thought about that. I'm going back to work, she said finally. People still need nurses. But Cross didn't resign. He fought. His legal team filed motions to suppress evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally. They argued the documents from Lena's apartment couldn't be authenticated. They demanded investigations into Torres for misconduct. But none of it mattered, because Webb had verified every document. The bank transfers were real. The emails were real. And 3 former staffers came forward with their own testimony about Cross, pressuring them to approve contracts in exchange for campaign donations. The Senate Ethics Committee voted to expel Cross pending criminal charges. He was arrested 2 weeks later. The charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, accepting bribes, obstruction of justice, and 17 counts of wire fraud. When they let him out of his office in handcuffs, Lena was there watching, not because she needed to see it, but because she wanted him to see her. He did. Their eyes met for just a moment. He looked away first. Torres was standing next to her. How does it feel? Like it's finally over. It's not, though. The other companies Ing documented. We're just starting on those. I know. You gonna help? Lena thought about it, about the cost, about everything she'd sacrificed and everything she'd gained. Yeah, she said, but on my terms. What terms? I'm not FBI. I'm not a consultant. I'm a nurse. That's what I do best. She looked at Torres. But if I see something wrong, I'm going to say something, and you're going to listen. Torres extended her hand. Deal. They shook, awed. 6 months later, Lena stood in front of a lecture hall at Portland State University. 200 nursing students looked back at her, notebooks open, waiting. She'd been invited to speak about patient advocacy, about speaking up when something's wrong, about refusing to be silenced. 3 years ago, she began, I was invisible. I worked in a hospital where nobody listened to me, where my concerns were dismissed, my reports were deleted, and my voice was considered less important than the people with medical degrees and corner offices. She walked across the stage. And for a while I believed them. I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I should just do my job and not ask questions. Maybe I should stay in my lane. A few students nodded. They understood. But then people started dying, and I had a choice. I could keep quiet and protect my career, or I could make noise and risk everything. She stopped and looked out at them. I chose noise. And it cost me. I was threatened, attacked, almost killed. I lost friends, lost sleep, lost any sense of safety I had. The room was completely silent. But I also saved lives. I exposed a conspiracy that had killed hundreds of people. I helped put criminals in prison, and I learned something important. She leaned against the podium. Your voice matters, not because of your title or your credentials, or how many years you've been working, but because you're the one seeing what others miss. You're the one at the bedside when something goes wrong. You're the one patients trust when they're scared. A student raised her hand. But what if nobody listens? Then you get louder. You document everything. You find allies. You go over heads if you have to. Lena smiled. And you never ever apologize for caring too much. Another hand. What if we're wrong? What if we speak up and it turns out we made a mistake? Then you learn from it and move on. But being wrong is better than being silent when you're right. After the lecture, students lined up to talk to her. They asked questions about documentation, about chain of command, about how to push back against doctors who wouldn't listen. One student, a young woman who'd been quiet the whole time, approached last. Miss Reyes, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been working part-time at a clinic, and I've noticed some things that don't seem right. But I was scared to say anything because I'm just a student. What kind of things? Medication errors, minor ones, but they keep happening with the same nurse and nobody's saying anything. Lena pulled out a business card. Document everyone you see. Dates, times, details. Then call me. We'll figure out who to report it to. The student's eyes went wide. Really? Really? You saw something. Don't let anyone convince you it doesn't matter. That evening, Lena drove to Riverside Park. She walked to the bench where she'd met Patricia Eng a year ago. Someone was already sitting there. Thomas Johnston. Thought I'd find you here, he said. Lena sat down next to him. How did you know? Torres told me you were speaking at the university today. Figured you'd come here after. They sat in comfortable silence for a minute, watching the river. I'm leaving tomorrow, Johnston said. Moving to Arizona, fresh start. That's good. Yeah, but I wanted to see you before I left. He pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Thomas, you don't need to. Just open it. Inside was a check. $50,000. Lena's hands shook. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. Part of my settlement from Vanguard Med. I don't need it all, and you gave up everything to fight for people like me, like Danny. His voice caught. Let me do this. I didn't do it for money. I know. That's why I'm giving it to you. He smiled. Use it for school, or a vacation, or just put it away knowing that someone sees what you did. Lena folded the check and put it back in the envelope. Thank you. No, thank you. Johnston stood up. You gave me justice. You gave me closure. You gave me my son's memory back. They hugged. Johnston held on for a long moment, then pulled back and walked away. Lena watched him go, then looked down at the envelope in her hands. She thought about what she'd do with it. Maybe take some time off. Maybe go back to school. Maybe just save it for when the next fight came. Because there would be a next fight. There always was. 2 months later, Lena was back in Ward D when Dr. Okafor called her into an exam room. The Meridian medical patient, the one you flagged. What about him? You were right. The implant was defective. We removed it yesterday, and he's already improving. Okafor pulled up a chart. But that's not why I called you in. I pulled records on other Meridian patients. Found 8 more with similar complications. Lena felt the familiar tightness in her chest. Did you report it? I did better. I called the state medical board and demanded an investigation. Told them if they didn't act, I'd go to the media. Okafor smiled. Figured I learned from the best. What did they say? They're sending inspectors next week, and Meridian's already suspended shipments pending review. Lena felt something release. You did good. I had a good example. Okafor handed her a file. There's one more thing. The hospital board asked me to give you this. Inside was a letter. Dear Miss Reyes, on behalf of Redwood Veterans Hospital, we want to formally apologize for the treatment you received during your employment here. Your concerns were dismissed when they should have been investigated. Your reports were deleted when they should have been escalated. And your dedication to patient safety was questioned when it should have been celebrated. We are implementing new protocols to ensure this never happens again. All patient safety reports will now be reviewed by an independent committee. All staff concerns will be documented and tracked, and all medical decisions will be subject to peer review. These changes exist because you refused to stay silent. We would be honored if you would join our Patient Safety Board as a permanent member. With respect and gratitude, the Redwood Veterans Hospital Board of Directors. Lena read it twice. Then she folded it and put it in her pocket. You going to accept? Okafor asked. Yeah, but they're going to regret it when I start making them actually change things. Okafor laughed. I'm counting on it. That night, Lena's phone buzzed one last time. The unknown number, the one that had started everything. You did it. Cross is in prison. Vanguard Med is bankrupt, and the system is changing. Well done. Lena typed back. Who are you? For the first time, she got an answer. Someone who believed in you before you believed in yourself. Someone who saw what you could do and made sure you had the information to do it. Someone who's been exactly where you are. Another message. My name is Rachel. I was Cross's deputy chief of staff for 6 years. I watched him take bribes and ruin lives, and I said nothing because I was scared. But when I saw what you did with Vanguard Med, I realized I didn't have to be scared anymore. Lena stared at the screen. So I gathered evidence. I waited for the right moment, and I gave it to the one person I knew wouldn't back down. Thank you for being that person. Lena's eyes burned. She typed, Where are you now? Witness protection. Testifying against Cross and 4 other senators. We're just getting started. Good. Make them pay. I will. And Lena, keep fighting. The world needs more people like you. The messages stopped. Lena sat on her couch, staring at her phone, thinking about all the people who'd helped her along the way. Torres, Johnston, Webb, Patricia Eng, and now Rachel, whoever she was. All of them fighting in their own way. All of them refusing to look away. She opened her laptop and pulled up the news. Senator Cross's trial was starting next week. 3 other senators had resigned. 6 defense contractors were under investigation. And buried at the bottom of the page, a small headline. Meridian Medical recalls hip implants after safety concerns. Lena smiled. She closed the laptop and went to bed. 1 year later, Lena stood in a different courtroom, this time as a witness in the Cross trial. The courtroom was packed. Media everywhere. Cross sat at the defense table looking older, smaller, defeated. The prosecutor called Lena to the stand. Miss Reyes, can you explain to the jury how you first became aware of Senator Cross's involvement in the Vanguard Med conspiracy? She did, calmly, clearly, with documentation. Cross's attorney tried to discredit her again, but this time the prosecutor had emails, recordings, testimony from Rachel and 3 other former staffers. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts, Cross was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. When they let him out, Lena was there again. This time, he didn't look at her at all. 3 years after the night she'd stopped 4 armed men in a hospital corridor, Lena Reyes walked into Ward D for her shift. A new nurse was struggling with a difficult IV insertion. Lena walked over. Angle it up 15 degrees, you'll catch the vein. The nurse adjusted. The IV slid in smoothly. How did you know? Experience? Lena smiled. You'll get there. Dr. Okafor appeared with a chart. Lena, got a minute? I want your opinion on something. They walked to a patient's room together, discussing symptoms, reviewing labs, making decisions as equals. Later, during a staff meeting, the new hospital administrator presented patient safety metrics. Infection rates down 40%, medication errors down 60%, patient satisfaction up across the board. He looked at Lena. These improvements are directly tied to the protocols you helped implement. Thank you. Everyone clapped. Lena just nodded. After the meeting, Torres called. You sitting down? Should I be? We just arrested the CEO of Meridian Medical. Turns out they were doing exactly what Vanguard Med did, except they were also bribing VA inspectors. How many deaths? 37 confirmed, probably more. Lena closed her eyes. And you found this because Dr. Okafor wouldn't shut up about the implant failures. She filed so many reports that the inspectors had to actually look. Torres paused. She learned that from you. Good. There's more. The whistleblower who came forward, one of Meridian's nurses. She said she was inspired by your story. Said if you could take down Vanguard Med, she could take down Meridian. Lena felt something warm spread through her chest. They're calling it the Reyes effect, Torres continued. People speaking up, refusing to be silenced. It's spreading. That's good. Yeah, it is. Torres was quiet for a moment. You did this, you know. You changed the culture. No, people were always willing to speak up. They just needed to know someone would listen. Well, they're listening now. After they hung up, Lena sat in her car in the hospital parking lot for a few minutes, thinking. She thought about Daniel Johnston, about Thomas Johnston, about Patricia Eng and Marcus Delancey, and all the people who died before anyone listened. She thought about the students at Portland State, about Rachel in witness protection, about the Meridian nurse who'd found her courage, and she thought about herself. The quiet nurse who'd been told to stay in her lane, who'd refused, who'd fought back, who'd won. She started the car and drove home, past the park where she'd met Eng, past the hospital where everything started, past the field office where Torres worked. When she got home, there was a letter waiting. It was from a nursing organization. They wanted to give her an award, the Florence Nightingale Medal for Advocacy and Courage in Nursing. She read the letter twice, then set it aside. She didn't need medals. She needed to show up tomorrow and do the work, because that's what mattered. Not the recognition, not the awards, not the news coverage. Just the work, just the patience, just the voice that refused to be quiet. She went to bed early that night, setting her alarm for the morning shift, and when she woke up, she put on her scrubs, clipped on her badge, and went back to Ward D. Because Lena Reyes wasn't a hero, she was a nurse. And that was enough, a shirt. 5 years later, on the anniversary of the night everything changed, Lena received a call from Johnston. Turn on the news. She did. The headline, Senate passes Medical Device Safety Reform Act, named after Vanguard Med whistleblower. The reporter explained, the Johnston-Reyes Act requires all medical device manufacturers to report failures directly to an independent oversight board. It mandates surprise inspections of manufacturing facilities and creates criminal penalties for executives who knowingly sell defective products. The bill passed unanimously. On screen, a senator spoke. This legislation exists because one nurse refused to be silent, because one woman looked at a broken system and said no more. We owe Lena Reyes a debt we can never repay. Lena turned off the TV, Johnston was still on the phone. You hear that? Yeah. They named a law after you. After us. The Johnston-Reyes Act. Danny would be proud. So would all of them. They were quiet for a moment. You still working? Johnston asked. Every day? Good. Don't stop. I won't. She hung up and looked around her apartment. It was small, simple, exactly what she needed. On the wall was a single-framed photo, her old unit, Afghanistan. 12 faces smiling despite everything. Next to it, a newer photo, her and Torres and Johnston at the Vanguard Med sentencing. And below that, a newspaper clipping from last week. Local nurse helps expose fourth medical fraud scheme. Because Lena hadn't stopped. And she wouldn't. As long as there were patients who needed protecting, systems that needed challenging, powerful people who thought they were untouchable, she would be there, speaking up, refusing to stay quiet, being exactly who she was. Not a soldier anymore, not a victim, not invisible, just a nurse, who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimated, the one they told to shut up, the one who refused. And the world was better for it. Lena Reyes put on her jacket, grabbed her keys, and headed to the hospital for her shift. Because people needed her, and she would always show up, always speak up, always fight back. Not because she was fearless, but because she'd learned something important. Fear was just noise, and she'd never been good at staying quiet.